The board meeting will come to order at 5 p.m. Good evening, and thank you for attending the Albuquerque Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board meeting on Thursday, October 9th, 2025. Ms. Perla, can I get a member roll call?
Xander Bullionitz.
Present.
Eduardo Budanaro.
Present.
Aaron Calderon.
Present.
Rowan Weimark.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Perla. The next order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, if you hold the chat, Jesus. Sorry, you guys.
Oh, no, you're fine. All right, next order of business is the approval of the agenda. Do any board members have any proposed changes to the agenda?
No.
None for me, Chair.
All right, then I make a motion that the agenda be approved as written. Can I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. Ms. Barella, can I get a member roll call vote?
Chair Bullionitz.
Approved.
Member Budanaro.
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimark.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barella. Next order of business is the review and approval of minutes. Do any board members have any proposed changes to the minutes from September 11th, 2025? No. All right. Then I make a motion that the minutes be approved as written. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Budanaro. Ms. Barella, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bullionitz.
Approved.
Member Budanaro.
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimark.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barella. Next order of business is the report from city departments. The first up is APD, Internal Affairs Professional Standards Division, presented by Commander Ryan Nelson.
Good evening. Regarding the report for September, I'll go over the highlights. Total cases open were 66 cases. Total closed cases were 70. And 104 total pending cases. Average days to completion is 56 days. The top standard operating procedures violations with sustained findings were in these categories, starting with the highest. 2-8, use of body recording devices. Second is 1-1, personal code of conduct. Third was missed court, 2-76. Third was scheduled and unscheduled leave, 321. And fifth is 3-41, complaints involving department personnel. And that's the order of categories that receive highest to lowest. Any questions regarding that?
I do. Sir, question on the 2.8 for the use of on-body recording devices. What's the pattern that you've seen with that? Is it more like just the devices failing as they get knocked off, or are they just not recording, hitting the record button prior?
It's a catch-all for anything related to OBRD.
Correct.
So it could be you didn't turn it on at all, you turned it on late, you didn't dock the camera, you didn't categorize something specifically, which I think we're trying to accomplish by the new 2-8 policy that I think we may or may not talk about today. We're just going to allow videos to be kept indefinitely. So there's really not going to be a purpose to force officers to categorize these videos. And a lot of times we'd have a lot of our proactive officers, our PRT officers would be working downtown. Not enough or too much? Not enough, okay. So you'll be on a call and then something else will happen just down the road and you'll have to deal with that. So the CAD system wouldn't link that portion automatically. So it became an issue, but it's very difficult to go back a month later, as per our current policy, and identify that and put the appropriate CAD associated with that recording. And I think it was an unfair process as well, because there's a failure with the technological system that we have. So what we're doing is we're keeping all video forever, and that if it ever comes up, we can identify it and find it. And that's the whole idea.
Okay, I appreciate it, thank you.
So going, and I want to continue your train of thought for the OBRD recording devices for the findings. Should we try to maybe bucket them a little bit more into subcategories? Like, I would maybe think it's simple of didn't turn it on or a technical issue,
Sure.
right?
I mean,
And then that way we can kind of identify, is it a technical issue, technical or physical issue, like it fell off versus you just didn't turn it on?
we don't typically sustain a technical issue. So if they're hitting the camera and we can see that and it registers, we're not gonna find that violation is sustained. So that's not a typical violation that you'll see in 2-8. It's gonna be a human error most of the time. The vast majority, all of these are gonna be just human error. And I don't think we're ever going to get away from this unless we have a significant increase in our technological advancement.
Commander,
Yeah, actually, it was just like to piggyback off of Commander Nelson. We don't even really issue internal affairs requests for technical issues or body cams that get knocked off.
oh, okay, yeah.
It's not. It would be a waste of everybody's time because it's not human error. It's just the way it happens, right? It's not the officer's fault if they got knocked off in the middle of a fight, or if the camera just stops working, right? I think it's a completely different issue. Maybe if the officer had not recharged his camera, right, then we have a little bit different of an issue. But just to kind of reiterate what Commander Nelson was saying is we don't even really investigate it if it's a technical error or something that happens in the heat of a moment where it gets knocked off the body.
Okay, no, I think that clarity helps me at least kind of understand what is and is not included in that, so I appreciate that. So, any other questions from board members? No? Thank you so much, Commander.
Thank you. We'll double team it like that from here on out.
There, as you, yeah. All right, next order of business is the APD report from Internal Affairs Force Division by Commander Scott Norris.
Good afternoon. One thing I kind of want to point out, and I believe that everybody, I believe, received this email with regard to, this was, or September was the month that we were going to start with shows of force not being uses of force anymore. Just keep in mind on this report, you're still going to see shows of force on this report because we were counting shows of force as uses of force up until the 19th of the month, right? So you're not going to see a sharp decrease in the uses of force because we were counting those shows of force as uses of force for 3 weeks out of the month. So you'll probably see a more dramatic change for next month's meeting as it reflects kind of a full month, 5 weeks of us not counting shows of force as uses of force. But for the month of September, things kind of change the same in terms of the area commands who get in the most force events, right? Southeast Area Command was by far the leader. The next down, or they had 22 uses of force. The next down was the Valley Area Command. So, you know, exactly 50% higher, not increase, but just 50% higher incidences of uses of force for the month of September from the Valley to the Southeast. And then the next area command was Northeast. So that's pretty much in keeping with kind of what we see on a regular basis with those area commands. We were down just by 1 use of force in September. From August to September, we had 53 use of force incidences. Like I said earlier, we look at that probably going down here in the future, being as those shows of force are looked at just as that, as shows of force. As far as a force rate per 1,000 calls for service, it's pretty much tracking the area commands, the top 3 area commands that I was telling you about, right? The 22 in the Southeast, 11 in the Northeast, and 11 in the Valley, and 7 in the Northeast. So Southeast, about every 2.5 calls for service per 1,000 calls for service, there's a use of force. The next one would be the Valley with 1.8, and then the third one would be Northeast with 1.3. Force rate per 100 arrests. In the Southeast, it's going to be about 3 uses of force per 100 arrests, and 2.4 in the Valley, 1.9 in the Northeast Area Command. Typically, the kind of the age group where we're using most uses of force still staying the same between 30 and 39. However, with the ages of 20 and 29, there was only basically 3. They had between 20 and 29 years of age, they had 20 uses of force, and between 30 and 39, 23 uses of force. So it's not that far off between those two age ranges. 76%, almost over 3/4 of the people who we get in use of force incidents are male, with the remainder being, the 24% being female. Behavioral health involved, we were able to positively identify 19% of those uses of force as some sort of behavioral health or mental health issue going on, and the 21% was unknown. It was that information it was difficult to extrapolate that information based off the information we got this for the month of September. For alcohol and drugs, 42%. 42% of the individuals that we were dealing with that we ended up getting in use of force incidences were under the influence of some sort of intoxicating liquor or drug, and 43% it was unknown. As far as total force cases where each type of force was used, empty hand takedowns, it's the winner again, right? That's the majority of force that we do use. We did have 10 ECW deployments, and we had 1 officer-involved shooting. Types of calls for this past month, suspicious persons or vehicles, which is usually common where we're getting in uses of force. Family disputes were up in September in terms of us using force on those types of calls relative to previous months. And then wanted persons came in, and 7 individuals we got in uses of force with had some sort of either misdemeanor or felony warrant. All of our cases we completed within timelines. As far as the level 2 and 3 cases, we completed within that 90-day timeline. There was one case that we did ask for an extension on, and that got completed on day 115, so 5 days prior to the 120-day limit. And we had 1 out of policy use of force last month. The rest were all in policy. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Commander.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't see university on there. Do they
I'm
not
sorry,
have
I didn't-
anything going on?
I
The
didn't hear the first-
University Area Command?
I'm sorry, the which area command?
University.
University Area Command. I think that is, let me make a note of that. That's actually a really good point. It does not show the University Area Command. So what I'm wondering, and I will actually have them parse that out, what I'm wondering is if they were combining the University Area Command with the Southeast Area Command. So that's, I'll make a note of that right now and send Dr. Valier, who puts together this report, a request if we could get those numbers for just that area command.
Perfect. No, that's great. Good call.
Does the University Area Command have any of the international district?
No, ma'am.
That's what I thought. Not that I want to sound biased or anything, but it does seem your uses of force normally happen in an international
Yeah, University Area
district.
Command's a relatively busy area command. I would
Yeah.
venture to say that you probably, now that you pointed that out, where we have, Southeast is usually the leader, Valley, who's usually number 2, and Northeast, it's usually number 3. I'm thinking Northeast is probably gonna get kicked out, and it's probably gonna be Southeast, University Area Command, and then Valley.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds about right. Board members, any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, sure.
All right, next order of business is the report from ACS by Deputy Director Jeffrey Bustamante.
Good afternoon. Good to see everybody again. Series of updates, really excited to share. I'll start kind of working through it. So with our field division, calls have been coming down along with the weather. You know, we always see them peak in the summer. With that said, we have new reports coming out that I will share as soon as we have them ready. But we worked with some of our partners in the Department of Technology and Innovation to reconfigure how we're doing our reports. You know, some of those numbers were useful like in our earlier years, but now that we're 4 years old, you know, there's some data that maybe we captured back in 4 years ago that we don't have to report on as much anymore. So you'll see some new reports when I get them sent over, and you'll see a lot of new data fields. I do have a few kind of important things from that though. So far our fiscal year to date through September calls, we have done 13,168, and last month it was right at about 3,400 calls, 3,500 calls, which is pretty consistent for what we see as things start to cool down. We also, let's say the 3,500 last month, 2,984 came through 911. A good chunk of the rest were 311, of the remaining like 500, and then we do have some self-referrals and the rest in there. As I mentioned last time, we do have priority systems now for our calls. We've always used priorities, but we did introduce a priority one now to ours. Now, for clarity, our priority one is not like APD's priority one. APD's priority ones, not to speak for them, are their most intense calls, of course, and a different and higher level of intensity than maybe what our responders are going to. So I wouldn't, it's not to say that they're equivalent, but rather they are our highest priority, which tend to be suicidal ideations. Somebody who calls either 988 and it gets into the 911 system, or calls 911 directly and is an active suicidal ideation. Of that, we had over 200 of those last month. Our clear to call, and the data really captures this well, we are from entry to dispatch and dispatch to on scene about 40 minutes for those. We are on scene for those an average of about an hour. So we are, which for such a high priority and intense call, we're not shocked to see our teams out there as much. For our priority twos, we are typically on scene within about 50 to 55 minutes. And then when I send the data, it really just builds from there as we start to get over an hour and the rest. So all to say, for the highest priority, we do get to those pretty quickly. And then of course, you know, some of the other call volumes, not as much, which I think we've had some questions here before. And of course, if we have a board with some low priority calls, folks who are fine, it just got called in to do a quick check on them, but then somebody comes in, or we get a few of those suicidal ideations a day, it'll wipe out our teams. With that said, we will be publishing that soon. We're just in the final bits of kind of getting everything cleared. I think another important data point that we had from this is we have our mobile crisis team that is that co-response with a independently licensed clinician and an APD officer. Last month, we had 178 of those calls, and a question that we often would get is how many of those end up as certificate for examinations, so where the individual is taken typically to UNMH for evaluation. Last month, that was 8, and they did 17 transports total, so the remaining 9 would have been transports to some other thing, or an individual opting into some of those behavioral health supports. So really excited. A lot of that data is new data that we're getting in there, and I will share it as soon as we get that buttoned up, but I know we're right on the door of that one. And I just want to thank our DTI partners, while they're not here today, for all the work they did to help us kind of shore up our information. Things since the last time I presented, I saw some of you at the Southwest Safety Center grand opening. That was very exciting. We're excited to be there. It is, you know, wonderful to now have 2 spaces on the west side. And then about 9 days later, we did our Trauma Recovery Center grand opening, which we were really excited and proud of. We actually met with the National Association of Trauma Recovery Centers. I mean, we meet with them pretty regularly because we're part of that partnership, but we met with them separately. And I was excited to share with them, you know, all the things that we've done, and they were excited to hear it because, you know, a lot of TRCs are either nonprofits or they're kind of components of something larger, but to see how we've taken that trauma recovery model, which there is like a nationally recognized model, and woven it throughout all of our operations, especially in the violence intervention division. We've built something really comprehensive here. And it's exciting because it is New Mexico's first trauma recovery center. And What that means, just briefly to the folks here, is it's typically two major pillars of wraparound case management, which with a basis of trauma-informed care, and then access to therapeutic services. And we do have multiple contractors who offer therapeutic services, as well as an RFP that is currently live, so of course can't share any detail on it, but we're really excited about that. And we'll be coming into these chambers with council, I'm sure, for award before too long, so keep your ears out. Outside of that, in the Violence Intervention Division, they are also flying. I mean, it's been really busy. We're getting a ton of referrals into every program. As I mentioned, we're at Del Norte now. Those caseloads are getting much larger. We did present to the Legislative Health and Human Services Committee yesterday on the school-based violence intervention program at their request, talking about our reduction in major offenses, minor offenses, the growth of the program, and the rest. And then finally, of course, out of the administrative division, they're doing a lot of heavy work to make sure to keep all this rolling, the quality assurance, the policy, and the rest. As we make these adjustments, we also have to make policy adjustments, as you might imagine. And as I'm sure you know, given that many of our responders are unionized, we also work with the union on those to get those approved. Final just kind of bit to put on your radar before the next time I see you. Our seasons of nonviolence will now kick off. On October 31st, we'll do a trunk or treat at our facility that'll have food and games and everything else. The following Saturday, November 8th, we're going to do a fall festival at our facility as well. Have some artists, some games, really just stuff for family to do. And then the following Saturday after that, we'll be doing a drive-in movie. Again, we're bringing those back at Balloon Fiesta Park. We're working on doing a turkey giveaway for families that it will help them to have that at the end of the movie. That way it doesn't spoil in people's cars. We don't get like 2,000 New Mexicans sick. But it is narrowed down to either Freebirds or Zootopia. And Zootopia is getting the second one a couple weeks later, so we're really on the fence which one we'll do. But we'll do one of those too, and would love to see you guys there.
Wonderful, thank you. Board members, any questions for Mr. Bustamante?
Just a quick question. From September 2024 to this year, what are the comparative numbers, if you have it handy?
I do, if you can give me
Calls for
just
service.
1 second. So the numbers are pretty steady. The major, let's see, last September, we had a total of, okay, they have jumped up. So last year's total for September was 2,992 calls, and this year we're right at about 3,500. So 600 increase, about 20% higher, which is what we would have, we saw through the summer.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely.
What's your busiest shift, and do you have appropriate staffing for it? Because you need more staff on the busiest shift,
So that's a little bit of a layered question. Our busiest shift is swing into Grave, so kind of like 2 p.m. to about 10 p.m. is our highest call volume block. We are comfortable and confident in our staffing to be able to respond, especially to high priority calls quickly, get to on scene within 40 to 50 minutes, sit with folks, whether it's safety planning, doing the rest. Of course, and as I'm sure you've heard here and at city council meetings and the rest, as resources are available, we are always would love to see more responders, but we are confident we can accomplish what is mission critical for our department with what we currently have. With that said, if anybody ever offers to double our workforce, I mean, we're not going to complain about that either. The training team might a little, but they'd be excited.
thank you.
Mr. Bustamante, I don't know if I just didn't hear it, which is high probability. Did you give an update from the results of Summer of Nonviolence and how that went this year?
So we are actually packaging that up now at a high level, and we even have a press release probably going next week on this. But at a high level, we had about 3,000 to 3,500 unique individuals, or not unique, but 3,000 to 3,500 individuals at last year's Summer of Nonviolence with about 700 pledges. We got over 2,000 pledges this year and over 11,000 people across all of ours. We did do a couple more events, but what's interesting is that it was actually, I think, only one more movie. A lot of the additional events we did were more actually lower population events, things like the basketball camp, stuff like that. So not only did we see more events, but we saw more people at the like events from last year. I think our top attendance at the movies was like 1,200, and this year it was 2,400 at 10 Things I Hate About You, which as a millennial makes me very happy.
Yeah. No, that's great. I want to, again, as you know, I'm a data nerd. I want to see that data and
Absolutely.
see what that is, especially by month, would be great. And so that's great. You guys are blowing up that fast, right? So that's amazing.
Absolutely, thank you for that. And another thing that we're doing is, as we compile the budget and look at seasons and nonviolence, is of course we're always sensitive to return on investment and if we're getting the right population. So the movies, while we have multiple trucks and there's a cost to showing a movie, that way the studios don't get mad at us and all of that, actually still have a great return on investment, because if we spend, 15,000 but get 2,500 people, the cost on that, I don't, off the top of my head, sounds like about $7, $8, but I could be wrong on that. Sometimes and the more intimate ones, we have worked to scale to the correct population and choose venues that are A, accessible, and also B, sometimes folks will work with us. So as a great thing, like some of the costs were waived when we did a dance at the convention center, because the CAO's office and the convention center worked together to make sure that we could do that to keep price low, knowing that not all of Albuquerque's teens want to drive downtown, but some still do, and there are kids in the area that we want to bring the love to.
So my brain just might have broke a little bit for a second. So just with this whole thing, just go with it. With all the different, I think I saw something that Albuquerque is one of the top movie cities for Netflix, Amazon, all the other major ones. Have you guys thought about reaching out, like has ACS thought about reaching out to them for, maybe some more, that way you can get some more like maybe brand new off the press movie releases, because it's a donation, whatever, because it is still in their community. I don't even know if it's feasible, just thought that might be something possible.
So I love the question, and the brief answer is yes, in part because, to your point, like sometimes there are newer movies that are made available that people would rather see as a drive-in and things like that. So we've started to have those conversations along with a wider network of partners, from the banks to the health insurers to everybody else who would love to really, now that we've kind of gotten through proof of concept and shown that we can get people out that want to jump in and be partner to this. And we're more than happy to have them at the table, because if they can bring resources to our neighbors and then also prevent some costs on our side, we're all about that. And also the movie theaters themselves, every single one has a different management group. Some are kind of more excited than others to work in that space. I will say, while it's not in the city of Albuquerque, I do some nonprofit work on the side and like Rio Rancho Cinema does like sensory sensitive screenings and stuff like that. And I would love if we got into some of that space too.
That would be awesome.
In Albuquerque, though, not Rio Rancho.
Well, any other questions?
Great.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, the next order of business, it will be the report from the city attorney, the managing attorney, Lindsay Rosenberg.
Good evening, board. I have a couple of updates for you in regards to things that the city is doing with the changes happening at the federal government. We have joined 2 lawsuits that are occurring right now. These lawsuits are ongoing. One is the San Francisco versus Trump case. This is a case involving funding and restricting funding to so-called sanctuary cities and grants that the federal government issues. So we have joined that case, the city has, and the court in that case issued what's called a preliminary injunction, which means that the federal government is not able to enforce the action that they're being accused of here, which is restricting the funding. So that case, of course, is moving forward. The second case, very similar, King County versus Turner, same idea. This is a case that was started because the Housing and Urban Development federal agency was similarly placing restrictions on grants for housing. And so the city has joined that lawsuit as well. Similarly, there is a preliminary injunction in place that prohibits the federal government from enforcing it at this time. So those 2 cases are ongoing. The third item that the city has taken part in is issued a letter to, as part of the rulemaking process, at the U.S. Department of Education related to some proposed changes to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. It's called the PSLF program, where employers of nonprofits or any public entity can get their loans forgiven if they work for the public entity for so many years. I think it varies depending on your degree. I'm not entirely certain about that. But the proposed changes, I'll just read from the department's own press release, would restrict employers, borrowers whose employers are engaged in activities with a substantial illegal purpose. They describe a substantial illegal purpose such as supporting terrorism, aiding or abetting discrimination, or violations of immigration laws. And so those who work under their description of those things, for employers who do those things, would not receive the benefits of PSLF. And so the city attorney's office submitted a letter. I can share that with the board as well, so you can see kind of how that's outlined. The city, as part of this, conducted a survey of how many employees are currently engaged in PSLF and how important that is to their continued employment with the city. Of those who responded, 829 employees responded, 200 employees currently participate, 24%, which is a pretty significant number. If you're going to say about a quarter of those who responded, in fact, engage in this. And so those are some of the things the steps that we've taken so far in engaging with the federal government on certain things. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions from the board? No? Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is the City Council report by Chris Sylvan.
Good evening, Board. Chris Sylvan, Albuquerque City Council. Two updates. One update is the agency put in for OC 25-49. That is the FY25 one-year objectives. It's a report that goes to City Council from different departments, or in this case, the agency, which tells what the agency has done over the last fiscal year. And the two things that the agency reported on is clearance of the backlog and also measures to reduce the vacancy rate. So I'll give an update next month on how that went into council. And then the other update is we've completed all our interviews, and now we're going to start scheduling the interviews with the counselors. The applicants looked pretty good, and looking forward to seeing what the counselors say. And I don't have a really strong timeline to give you on how soon you'll get a new board member, but you know, it should happen soon. Looking forward to maybe the end of the year. Let's keep our fingers crossed. With that, I stand for questions.
Thank you. Board member, any questions? Thank you, Mr. Sylvan. All right. Next up is the report from the Community Policing Council, CPC, by Kelly Mensa.
Good evening, Honorable Chair. Good evening, CPOA Board, and everyone else in attendance. We've had a fairly decent month over the last 30 days since the last meeting. We've had a couple of meetings, Valley CPC. We had the chief, but he could not make it that night due to another commitment. So DC Barker stepped in, and we spoke about a lot of things that night. First of all, probably most important being the National Guard deployment, which is interesting to a lot of our members. So we got a flyer about what they're actually doing, because there is a lot of controversy as to what they're doing and what they're not doing, and she answered a lot of questions that night, and that was good. The Northwest, we had Chief Medina. Then we had a youth CPC meeting. We only had 3 youth attend this time, unfortunately. Angelo's grinding hard. I'm trying to help him, but we've had a little challenge right now. In any event, we did have 2 interesting guests. We had Jessica Solis, who runs the Emergency Operations Department for the city. She's presented at a few of our meetings now, and we're hoping to help her get a few people who are interested in joining up, being 911 or emergency operators. And we did have one kid who said he was very interested in doing that. And also from the meeting she's presented, we've had a couple of people who said they were interested, they were going to look into it. So hopefully the requirements for that job are pretty strong. And we're hoping to get a couple of people onto the city rolls. I think they're down by 21 operators right now. So that's significant. That causes to forced overtime and a lot of other things because they need to get the shifts covered. In that meeting with the YCPC, we also had a young man who was a police service aide, and he did an excellent job of speaking about the program. So he spoke about why he was interested, what he does on a daily basis, what his friends and family think about what he's doing and what his plans are afterward, and how long he knew he wanted to be a police officer because as the program is supposed to work, he is scheduled to join the police force in another year when he's 21. So that's going to be a good idea. In the Southwest CPC, we hosted Matthew Powell of the Drug Enforcement Agency in El Paso. He talked about a lot of issues with drugs coming across the border and how they deal with that. That was pretty interesting. And in the university, Chief Medina also spoke. We had someone I met the night before that, or the day before that, during Coffee with a Cop, which I'll get into later. National Coffee with a Cop Day was last week, so I attended a few of those events. But a woman named Teresa Law wanted to come by and address the University Council about how important it is to come to these events because she got defined and measurable results from coming to a meeting and speaking to the police chief. She had some issues with some people who were vagrants and some other issues on her block. She told the area commander and actually showed up and did something about it. She was a little surprised. She was very happy to come and address the meeting about what had happened, and I believe she's going to join the council, so that's good. We have one more with the chief, and we're done with that. We're going to get a return visit from the warden, Kai Smith, to answer some more questions. He was extremely zealous about this. He said he wanted to attend all the meetings every other month. I said, that might not be necessary, but he's going to come a couple of times a year and address the council about what happens in MDC and in other issues with law enforcement. I addressed a couple of groups this month. First of all, were two groups with National Coffee with a Cop. We had one up in the foothills and one in the Northeast. And I spoke to a bunch of people at the restaurant, invited them to the meetings, and that was good. And from what I hear, this was a major turnout, a fairly good turnout all over the city. I addressed the Trumbull Neighborhood Association as well. We did about 5 people in that one, speaking about what the CPC does and then the efficacy of actually attending meetings. I also addressed South San Pedro Neighborhood Association, and there were about 7 people at that one, so that was pretty good. We've got the biannual block captains meeting coming up at the Academy this month, and usually there's 40 to 50 people there. If anyone does not know about the CPC, I talk to them. Because they're already volunteers along that vein, they're a pretty good audience. And we should be starting our advertising soon. I'm hoping this month. There's always a lot of delays to get things right with the city, but we're hoping to get that going this month. And we are going to be having our year-end dinner. Everyone up here is invited if you want to come. We are going to have hopefully a good speaker. I have not got him, verified yet, but we'll see what's going to happen with that. And hopefully it's a good recruiting event to get some new people. That is my report for the month. I stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mensa. Board members, any questions?
Okay, where are the youth CPC meeting? Is it a good central spot for everybody to get to?
It is online for this point, just for that
okay.
reason. We've had, the first one we had in person, and we actually bought the kids and their parents and representatives sandwich, and that was good. But we decided that with 15, 16, 17-year-olds, you just take away one issue that they tend to have, which is transportation. We always meet online at this point. they're all going to be coming to the dinner with their parents supposedly, so that'll be good.
Well, that makes sense, thank
Yeah.
you.
Mm-hmm.
I got it.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Mr. Mensa.
All right, thank you.
All right, the next order of business is a report from the mayor's office by Mr. Doug Small. All right, we will move on to the report from the CPOA with Deputy Director Ali Abbasi.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members of the board. The CPOA received 74 complaints intake from September 1st, 2025 through September 30th, 2025. 33 complaints were assigned for investigation between CPOA and ones appropriately or already with IA. 19 were driving complaints and one was resolved with supervisor involving ECC or the executive staff at APD. 2 have been assigned for mediation. There were 19 that were miscellaneous where either insufficient information was provided, it was determined that APD personnel were not involved in the complaint, or the complaint was resolved to the citizen's satisfaction due to they were seeking information. There were also 8 commendations that were received during this period. Some staffing updates for the agency. The data analyst interviews are being conducted, and we are in the final phase of selecting a candidate. The senior administrative assistant position have been filled. We are awaiting applications from the human resources for the last 2 vacant positions, which are the investigator positions. Once we receive those, we will schedule interviews. Our aim is to have less than 5%. That means 1 position vacant by the end of the calendar year 2025. There's been 4 special orders that came out recently amending the use of force policy suite, as Commander Norris mentioned earlier as well, starting September 20th, 2025. Some notable changes in those included the shows of force will now be treated differently than use of force, than the level 1 use of force. Witness supervisors can now conduct on-scene investigations, and the utilization of the Uniform Incident Report to track metrics related to the use of force. Those are some of the notable changes in those 4 special orders that came out. There are also changes to the policy development process, SOP 3-52, effective October 1st. There was another special order. The change primarily pertains to the removal of the DOJ review process from the SOP. It does not impact the CPOAB 35-day policy review. There has also been another change to SOP 3-46 discipline system via a special order which was effective October 3rd, 2025. Cases that fall under a class 6 and 7 sanctions will not exceed 40 hours and 24 hours suspension, regardless of the occurrence. This is currently implemented as a 6-month pilot program, and we will closely monitor how this process evolves over time and work with the Internal Affairs Professional Standard to determine whether sanction level for some of these policy violations that fall under class 6 and 7 need to be reevaluated or not. And then lastly, as a reminder, the board requested SWOT training and presentation will be held on November 3rd at 10 p.m. at the CPOA office. If the board needs anything additional to be requested from the SWOT team, please let us know and we will communicate it with APD. And that's all I have. I stand for questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Board members, any questions?
What time was that training at?
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Correct.
I think I heard 10 p.m. I was like, what?
No, I said,
Just make sure to send us an invite for a meeting, calendar invite for us to remember, because I will forget. Because if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't happen. Let's be honest here. Any other questions? Thank you so much, Deputy Director. All right, the next order of business is public comments. I don't believe we don't have any written public comments, but do we have any speaker public comments, Ms. Brilla?
Mr. Chairman, there are no speakers signed up to provide public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brilla. All right, the next order of business is the appeal, and that is CPC 335-24. So the first thing we want to do, Ms. Brella, the appellants are on Zoom, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, and I believe if we could get them on screen before you start, that would be appropriate.
Absolutely. All right, and then Are there any representation for APD here? Is the officer here, yes or no?
The officer's not here.
Okay, thank you. All right, now I'm going to ask the board's counsel to read out the rules and procedures that will be followed during this appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're now at the appeals portion.
Are you guys good to go? Let's make sure, are you guys good to go with the member?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're ready. Sorry. Thanks, counsel.
We're now at the appeals portion of the agenda, and the following process will be followed during the appeal. During the appeal, each interested party has an opportunity to be heard and present arguments stating their position. No new evidence will be permitted to be introduced during the appeal hearing. The hearing today is a quasi-judicial hearing, and the decisions will be made by the members of this board. The scope of this appeal will be limited to the complaint and the findings of the investigation that followed. If parties during their presentation go outside of this scope, they may be directed by the chair that the only arguments that will be considered by the board are those relating to the complaint and subsequent investigation. We are recording this meeting tonight so that a complete, clear record can be created of everything being said. However, please remember that we cannot create an accurate record with people talking over one another. If people start to talk over each other, the chair may call for order so that there can be a clear record of the hearing. The time limits for the hearing are as follows: 15 minutes for the complainant who requested the appeal or their representative. They may call witnesses, but this will count against their time. 10 minutes for the CPOA director or their designee. 5 minutes for the police officer if he or she is present. 10 minutes for APD, and then 5 minutes for the complainant or their representative to provide a short rebuttal to anything that has been presented by the other parties. The burden of proof is upon the complainant bringing the appeal to demonstrate either 1, a policy was misapplied in the evaluation of the complaint, or 2, that the findings and recommendation of the director were arbitrary, capricious, or constituted an abuse of discretion, or 3, that the findings and recommendations of the director were not consistent with the record evidence. These are the only bases upon which the board may modify or change the findings or recommendations of the director. At the end of each party's presentation, the board will be given the opportunity to ask questions. These questions do not count against the party's presentation time. The questions should be focused on clarifying the record or argument given and should not offer or invite new information or evidence from a board member through asking the question. Parties should remain respectful and professional during their presentations. Any disruption of another party's presentation will not be tolerated. At the close of the hearing, the board will deliberate. The board may make a determination in open session or decide to deliberate in closed session as allowed by the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. All final decisions by the board will be made public. Once a decision is made, a final written notice of decision will be provided to all interested parties as provided for in the CPOA ordinance. I would also add as a reminder that for everyone presenting, please do not use the officer's full name. Only use the officer and then initial as was indicated in the reports.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Guzman, Mr. Thane, did you hear all that since you are on Zoom?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we will have a timer on screen here for you momentarily. And so when we give you the mic, we will ask you to state both your names for the record. And then just as a reminder from council, please do not use the officer's name, just refer to them as officer and then first initial of their last name, please. Do you guys get that? We're good?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Do we have a time clock that is up? Okay. So, Ms. Guzman, Mr. Thane, your time starts now.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Thane. So, my main issue and the reason I'm appealing this is actually on the findings page. It states in the additional comments that Officer R made 6 phone calls on one night. This is infactual and goes against evidence that we provided in screenshots. Ultimately, Officer R made 5 calls that night, and then 1 call was made by his girlfriend. Now, the original complaint was down to him using what I believed his department issued phone. The reason why is because my fiance here had blocked him prior to a conversation that they had months and months prior, and he became aggressive. So she decided the best way forward would just be to block him and cease any kind of communication. He was using an app that alters or changes phone numbers, which is why he was able to contact her. It does say in here again that she initiated contact. The original initiation of the contact was, again, I believe approximately 6 months prior, and it was due to a P&M bill that her name was still on and she was unable to remove herself. The reason she texted him was because she wanted to get that removed, and the only way P&M offered to do that was through filing a report, which she didn't want to do, and trigger an internal investigation and be malicious. The timeline after he was blocked in August, he called 2 times under the altered phone number. He had a family member, who I won't say the name, reach out, and we sent screenshots of all of this, saying that he was trying to reach out to her. He showed up at her parents' house, uninvited, to initially drop her photos, but you know, it's hard to say that that was the reason. And then the night in question and why we initially put the complaint in, he called 5 times that night in quick succession. And I spoke to him on one of those calls. He asked if he could speak to her. I said no, very clearly, and hung up. At which point his girlfriend then called us. I believe this fits the state statute of harassment. I'm also a peace officer here in the state of New Mexico, and she is also a special agent. I have to disclose if I'm named on the police report. Once doing so with my agency, I handed over every evidence the same as I did with the Oversight Committee. They believed that it would warrant, they believed it was harassment and believed it would warrant to come over to you guys to review. Now, we have tried to be civil in this matter. Even as far as after he was blocked, they were both sent to collections because of this bill. We in fact paid for the remainder to get him out of collections. I did not once reach out to him. I decided the money spent to get them out of collections was worth her happiness, more so than going down that route. We understand that once she had made the decision to cease communication with him, we couldn't go back and forth. Then it wouldn't be harassment. So I do understand the findings with him not using the department issued phone, totally okay with that. And then also with the fact that he did not look me up in NCIC, totally okay with that. But I still believe this fits the criteria of harassment under state statute. When I came home and found her crying and shaking because he had called 5 times in one night, or less at that point because I hadn't picked up the phone yet, but multiple times in one night, I believe that I was in my right to act the way I did. I did, and I'll admit it, cuss at him, or I cussed at him when his girlfriend called. She escalated the situation. She cussed at me, I cussed at them, I hung up. Is that something I should have done? No, and I hold my hands up to it. But we had all this documentation and screenshots. We sent it over to the oversight. For this findings to be incorrect and against the evidence we presented is heartbreaking. It's caused emotional stress to her. This has been ongoing for almost a year. And today she had to leave work early because just of the anticipation of this. When I was a patrol officer, I'm not anymore. With harassment, I used to wait for 3 times before I would charge someone to show the pattern. With her and with this situation, he almost called double that in one night. Then you add in all the others. I believe this is clear as day. The only reason we didn't go the restraining order route or charges is, again, we do not want to cause issues in his careers, but this should not be acceptable. This is not acceptable. And none of this report reflects that. It doesn't explain. It just says he uses an app. It doesn't say that this app alters your phone number. Well, why would you need to alter your phone number? If you can freely communicate with someone, you shouldn't need to do that. But he had to. Therefore, she didn't want to be contacted by him. But he persisted. I want to hand over my time to her because she is the victim in this, and let her speak.
So my name is Ana Karen Guzman.
Sorry, she's having a very difficult time through this. Just to clarify.
Take as much time as you need. That's acceptable. No worries.
Appreciate it. This is what I walked into the night where he called 5 times. I would find any spouse, partner, someone who loves their partner, and not defend that, not be mad, not be angry.
So I don't know if I can speak on the complete report that we read. Can I?
Yes, you can.
So just to clarify, one thing that I found a little bit, one of the things that I found unsettling was that I believe his union representative believed that my fiance Paul was the only one pushing for this. Obviously, he wouldn't care about this if it weren't for me. The reason why he probably appeared that he was pushing for this was because obviously I was upset, and I have a tendency when I'm really upset, like I just start crying and I can't stop. So obviously he's going to be my voice and my rocker when I can't speak or represent myself. I care about this just as much. I did feel harassed. I did feel scared. I mean, he went to my house to speak to my mom, to hand in pictures after 2 years that we broke up. I genuinely do not believe that he went to the house just to give her pictures to give to me after 2 years, because after we broke up, he had gone to the house already. I cannot remember the reason why he went to the house. I believe it was a similar reason. And then also my mom said that when he went to the house was to, I believe it was to ask back for the ring and for some other, quote unquote, financial agreement that we had agreed upon, which was the case. But after I had, and again, I know this is civil, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but after I had done most of my part into what he had asked for, he didn't hold his end of the stick by letting me see our dog. So, and then he told me to go to civil court for that. So I was like, okay, like I'm not gonna push it. I just want to be done and over with him. I don't want to communicate. But at the same time, why am I gonna give him everything that he's asking for, even after the fact that I can't trust him? Because he said he agreed on what he agreed on, and now he can't hold his word for that.
If I can very quickly jump in, the big reason or his excuse for calling so many times was because they had a vehicle together. He was a co-signer. If you're on a loan, you can call the bank and find out any information about that loan. The loan had been taken he was off that loan a month prior to him calling and his girlfriend calling. Again, this report does not reflect that.
And just to piggy off that, after I was scared to get sent to collections because I've never gotten sent to collections, so I didn't want to reach out to him, but I also didn't. I respect him. I don't want to get him in trouble. He's expressed to me how bad internal affairs can be or used to be, with a simple police report or anything of such. So I decided to try and be the bigger person and just contact him directly. I was under the impression that at that time we could speak civilly, and just about the matters that needed to be talked about. So to be fair to him, he did fix it right there and then. But then right after that is when he asked me to switch the name or refinance the name into only my name, which I did contact. It was Nusenda. I did contact them right away. The only issue that I had, and I was clear and transparent with him, and I believe I also added that into evidence, screenshots of the text message. I was clear and transparent to him that him and I had my fiance and I had a pre-planned trip abroad. So it was during the time where Officer R was persistent about getting updates on the car. I told him that I know it was upsetting and I just wanted him to understand, which is when then he replied with, to me, it felt a pretty aggressive, harassing comment, because it did not have anything to do with our agreements. He started trying to talk about our relationship and what could have, should have. I don't need to talk about that with him, so I blocked him. Had I probably told him to stop talking to me? Maybe. But as a reasonable person, if I was blocked, I wouldn't contact them again, especially being in the career that we are in. I don't want to trigger anything for myself, for him, for anyone. I think a reasonable person, especially a reasonable officer, would understand that once you're blocked, cease contact. There are different ways where you can go about getting what you want or even just getting the information as you want. As my fiance said, it's a simple click, call Credit Karma, call Nusenda. He was on there on the loan, so he has access to know that information if he called. And when he called me, I believe it was 3 times, that's when I sent the text saying I don't answer unknown phone numbers. So unless you leave a voicemail or tell me what's going on, I'm not gonna answer, which is when that text message got prompted that it was an officer. I wasn't sure if it was Officer R because again, I had blocked his number. I do know he has a work phone, so I either thought it was him or that something dangerous or bad had happened to my family. So I did call them right away to make sure they were okay, which then they asked, yes, everything's fine, what's going on? So I told them what was happening. Again, I wasn't sure exactly who the officer was calling. That's when I was already scared and crying, shaking. And that's when my fiance answered and I recognized his phone. I recognized his voice. So I got even more upset. And especially after his girlfriend called, like, I have nothing to talk to her about. Like, my fiance told him I don't want to talk to them, so why keep persisting?
Yeah, Ms. Guzman, Mr. Thing, that is your time, so apologize. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Board members, do we have any questions for Mr. Thin or Ms. Guzman? All right, so we'll move to 10 minutes for the CPOA Deputy Director. Deputy Director, are you Just again, don't use the officer's name, and then, of course, state your name for the record. Your time starts now.
Thank you, Chair. Ali Abbasi, Deputy Director with the CPOA. On August 11, 2025, Mr. T sent an email to the CPOA requesting to appeal the decision of our agency's finding. I will avoid using the name of the appellant as a courtesy since they have asked multiple times and reached out to the agency a few times to have their names redacted from public documents. I would like to clarify, however, that when someone files a police report or when someone files a complaint with the CPOA, it becomes part of public record. However, I will respect their privacy concerns and will refer to them as Mr. T and Ms. G. In his appeal, Mr. T claimed that the report was inaccurate and misleading. It should be noted that Mr. T, the piece of paper that he was holding in his hand was CPOA's findings letter that is sent out to the complainants and not the full investigative report, which is 17 pages long. The investigative report lists the interview summations for both complainants, Detective R, who was involved in this case, the Rio Rancho Police Department report, all the evidence that was submitted by the complainants to include call recordings, screenshot of all the text messages, evidence to support that there was no use of NCIC, and all telephone numbers. There were 5 telephone numbers associated in this incident, and all of those numbers were listed in the investigative report with timelines of when contact was made by those using those numbers. It appears that the appellants remain dissatisfied with the investigative finding based on their statements made just now. Unfortunately, our role is not to address individuals' perceptions, but I can discuss the objective evidence that we reviewed and that became part of this investigation. Our investigation focused solely on the allegations of department phone use, the NCIC misuse, the claim of harassment, leaving all the other issues aside, most importantly, the perceptions and emotions that were involved. Mr. T originally alleged that the Detective R used his department-issued cell phone to contact Ms. G. He accepted the CPOA findings that Detective R did not use department-issued cell phone, but raised the issue that he used an application to disguise his personal phone number because he knew that Ms. G had blocked his personal number. When interviewed, Mr. Detective R advised that he attempted to contact Ms. G from his phone number that he had for 14 years, as well as the application that he had on his personal phone and not the department-issued cell phone. Detective R also explained that the reason Mr. T got an automatic response when he texted the unknown number was that the application is highly used by law enforcement officers to hide their personal telephone number from public. Detective also noted that the automatic reply that they were referring to did in fact state something about the officer not being available. He confirmed that this is his personal phone and he does not have the application on the department-issued cell phone. The final investigative report, again, it summarized the detective interviews, his reasoning for installing the application on his phone. The CPOA did not discover any violation of APD policy for Detective R for installing that application on his phone, personal cell phone. The CPOA found that several different phone numbers were used, but none of the actual calls were dismissive, determined to be harassing, dismissive, threatening, intimidating, or in violation of any APD SOP both on and off duty. Mr. T claimed here in his appeal that the detective made 6 phone calls, but this was misleading because he only made 5, with his current girlfriend making the 6th call. The investigator interviewed Mr. T, and he told the investigator that Detective R had called 6 or 7 times. When the investigator spoke with Ms. G, she also stated that Detective R called her 6 times from his work phone to contact her. The investigation provided a detailed summary of those calls in the final investigative report. It was documented that the 6th call was made by Ms. V, who is the current girlfriend of Detective R, and the call was transcribed verbatim in the final investigative report. The appellant stated in his appeal request that there was a pattern of unwanted contact, which is not documented in the report. The CPOA disagrees with this claim that Detective R repeatedly made unwanted contact with Ms. G. This was the primary allegation which was not supported by a preponderance of the evidence. The evidence presented by Mr. T and Ms. G did not demonstrate that Detective R made repeated unwanted contact. Detective tried to contact Ms. G, but never actually spoke with her during any of those 5 calls. Ms. G never directly told Detective R that she did not want to communicate with him. She left the open line of communication when they last spoke in August of 2024. He waited 4 months to follow up on the car loan because Ms. G mentioned she would take care of it, but did not let him know or follow up on it. All of this was documented in the final investigative report written by the agency. Mr. T stated in his appeal that the report failed to include reason why the CPOA concluded that the recorded phone calls did not show Detective R intimidated or harassed or upset anyone. The final investigative report explained why the investigator could not support this allegation. The 2 phone calls simply did not demonstrate what he claimed occurred. The submitted recordings did not confirm that Detective R harassed, intimidated, or upset anyone. He only spoke to Mr. T and asked to speak with Ms. G, and Mr. T hung up the phone. That was the only time he successfully connected with them over the phone. During the interview, Detective R stated that Ms. V, his current girlfriend, called, and that was made without his knowledge, and she only spoke to Mr. T to ask for the status of the car loan that was pending. The recording of that call does not show any harassing behavior. Mr. T also referenced the New Mexico state statute for harassment, and I'll quote that statute for members of the board. It states that harassment consists of knowingly pursuing a pattern of conduct that is intended to seriously annoy, seriously alarm, or terrorize another person, and that serves no lawful purpose. The conduct must be such that it would cause a reasonable person to suffer substantial emotional distress. Whoever commits harassment is guilty of a misdemeanor. The CPOA did not find that Detective R attempted phone calls to Ms. G met this burden of proof, as he never actually spoke with her. He had no intention to annoy, seriously alarm, or terrorize another person without a lawful purpose. This allegation was thoroughly investigated, and the evidence submitted by the appellants and gathered during the course of this investigation did not support this claim. Ms. G alleged that she suffered substantial emotional distress. However, neither Mr. T nor Ms. G provided evidence that this occurred because Detective R tried to make contact. Detective R was never told by Ms. G herself to stop contact, which is a necessary component for the state statute under harassment or intimidation by telephone. He briefly spoke to Mr. T, who told him no when he asked to speak to Ms. G. He asked to put Ms. G on phone. Simply not picking up a phone, one cannot make a reasonable assumption that would constitute the desire not to speak or unwanted communication. Detective R only contacted Ms. G to tie up a financial end. Mr. T claimed in his appeal request that it is inaccurate and misleading for the report to claim that Detective R had tried to contact Ms. G because she was the one who initiated contact. He explained that this was misleading because the initial contact occurred months earlier. The investigator fully documented a timeline showing when Ms. G first contacted Detective R and when he tried to reach her again several months later. The CPOA found that the Detective R was contacted by Ms. G in August 2024, and he paid the P&M bill she contacted him about. Detective R mentioned issues regarding an engagement ring and vehicle registration, which Ms. G told him she would follow up with him after returning from vacation. It was only after several months in December that Detective R tried to reach Ms. G, and this was all thoroughly documented in the final investigative report. They talked about Detective R going to her parents' home. During the interview, Detective R was asked about going to her parents' house, and he explained that he found a photo album of her family and decided to return it to Ms. G's parents. He reported that they hugged, her parents thanked him for the album, and he reported that Ms. G, mom, also offered to reach out to Ms. G about the car and the loan and the ring. All of this was again thoroughly documented in the report. Mr. T has not stated that he disagrees with the
Deputy
finding.
Director, your time is up, but thank you though.
Yes, sir.
So with that, board members, do we have any questions for Deputy Director Abbasi? No. All right, since we do not have the APD officer present, we will move on. Yes, well, that's what I was saying, the officer. Then we're going to move on to the APD representative.
Thank you. Oh, no.
So if the APD representative can come up to the microphone, and then of course, state when your time starts, you have 10 minutes. State your name for the record, and then of course, just as a reminder, please don't use the officers' names when speaking about this. So your time starts now.
Thank you, Mr. Boylantz, members of the board, members of the public. For everybody's knowledge, my name is Sean Waite. I'm one of two commanders with APD's Professional Integrity Division. Myself and my partner, Commander Landavazo, review all misconduct investigations and propose discipline from cases that come from the CPOA, from both IA components and from the Area Command cases. So in this case, we reviewed the CPOA's documentation of the investigation and their proposed findings. And really, their investigation came down to 3 points. One of was, did Detective R use his work cell phone? Did he harass the complainant or the appellant? And did he utilize Department of Computer Information Systems, specifically NCIC, to query the appellant's name? On the allegation of using his department cell phone, the investigators from CPOA showed clearly that he did not use his department issued cell phone. He used a personal cell phone on which he had installed an anonymizer. That cell phone and the anonymizer are not within the purview of the department. They also showed conclusively that he did not query the appellant's name in Department of Information Systems, specifically NCIC. And my recollection is that Rio Rancho Police Department was called regarding the harassment charge, and Rio Rancho declined to file on a harassment charge. So based on those 3 principal points, I concurred and my partner concurred with the disposition of unfounded for the 2 allegations of using the phone to harass and using Department Information Systems to query the appellant. That is all the information I have, sir.
Thank you, Mr. White, Commander White. Board members, do we have any questions for the commander?
Just to clarify, so Rio Rancho declined to file the charges for harassment, correct?
That's my recollection.
Okay. CPOA Executive Director Abbasi, are you aware of that as well?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, cool. We just wanted to clarify that question. So, so with that, yeah, we will move back to Ms. Guzman and Mr. Thane. You guys have Mr. Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. White, Commander White. Mr. Thane, Ms. Guzman, you have 5 minutes to rebuttal both the CPOA's findings and the APD representative. Are you guys on and ready?
Yes.
Okay. So with that, your 5 minutes starts now.
So just really quick, one point. If I remember correctly, I specifically told them, again, I don't want to get Detective R in trouble. I didn't want to press charges either. As a former police officer myself, I understand that one charge, you need a pattern. I understood that I was done with accepting this, and if I would have created a pattern before when it initially started, this probably would be a different story. I told Rio Rancho, if I'm correct, that I did not want to press charges. I just wanted a report to create a pattern.
My thing with the rebuttal is, if you can freely call somebody, why do you need to use an app to alter your phone number or mask your phone number? I think that's pretty evident. If I could call any of you, I wouldn't have to use an app to change it. The only reason he used the app was because he knew he couldn't directly call her. A reasonable person would understand that if someone has blocked you, they don't want contact. And I remember Rio Rancho, and this will be on their body cam, suggesting us going for a TRO. So we asked if they could call his sergeant or something like that and just say, hey, knock it off. Again, we've tried to take the nice road at every point. But to say that we just blow past the fact that he had to use an app to change his phone number, my question is why? He said that he had his phone number for 14 years. He had her phone number for, I'm assuming, many years. Why would you need to use that? Why didn't he just call the bank? There's a lot of things that could have been done differently. And we could have that night said to the police, Rio Rancho Police Department, yeah, let's start that proceedings. That was their suggestion, or one of. So to say that they didn't file charges because there wasn't a lack of evidence, it was because she decided to be nice and not push that. And again, my big question, why do you have to change your phone number? Why do you have to mask it if you can freely call somebody? Why?
And I understand that the CPOA, I believe, is only investigating APD policies. I knew that. Well, I guess continuing with the investigation, this was my way of trying to be nice to him, to tell him to stop talking to me. I guess the next step forward would have been a TRO, but I don't. It does not need to go that far, and I'm hoping he gets that now. Again, we don't care if he gets in trouble. I don't want him to get in trouble. I just want him to stop talking to me. I don't want to have to go to court. We're both police officers. We're both detectives. We understand what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done.
Thank you for sharing. I assume with the pause, you are done with your time. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for doing and being here and speaking with us. So with board members, do we have any questions for the appellants? No. All right. So with that and the testimony is concluded, I move the board convene in closed session as authorized by the administrative adjudication proceeding exceptions to the Open Meetings Act for the limited purpose of discussing the matter for CPC 335-24. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Budinaro. Ms. Barilla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bouillonnet.
Approved.
Member Budinaro.
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimark.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. The board will convene in closed session to deliberate this appeal. Welcome back. I make a motion to come out of deliberation. May I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. Ms. Barilla, can I get a roll call vote?
Chair Bolianis,
Approved.
Member Budenaro,
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon,
Approved.
Member Weimark.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barilla. I would like to pass the floor over to Vice Chair Calderon for our deliberation.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to both the appellants for presenting their case to us today. With that being said, the two items that we're looking at, of course, is the use of the cell phone, whether the using of APD's issued cell phone and the case of, excuse me, sorry, I lost my train of thought right there. NCIS, or NCIC,
Yep.
Correct? NCIC. With both findings, you all determined as well and agreed with the findings from the CPOA. For those, we do hold that finding as well. We uphold that finding. The portion for harassment that was mentioned within the appeal and the initial one, that falls outside of our jurisdiction, and we're not able to provide any guidance on that aspect. That falls out of our line of work. We look at APD policies, we look at APD's investigations and CPOA's investigations as well. And so the two portions that we do look at is the NCIC and, of course, the use of APD cell phones. So we uphold the findings of the CPOA director for those ones. With that being said, we're not able to advise further on that. So with that, do you happen to have any questions prior to moving on?
No, we do not.
Thank you to both. With that being said,
Yes,
the chair will take back over.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. Yes. Again, I just wanted to reiterate my thanks to both Mr. Thane and Ms. Guzman to present here and be here. And so I thank you for your time and everything else like that. You will be getting a written confirmation of the board's finding in the mail, I believe. And so I just was curious if you had any other email, sorry. No, not snail mail, but email. So yeah, with that, any other questions for the board?
No, sir.
No. All right, well, thank you very much. Oh, yes, to vote on the findings. I appreciate that. So with that, I make a motion that we uphold the findings of the CPOA with regard to CPC 335-24. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Budenaro. Ms. Perla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianis?
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro?
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon?
Affirmed.
Member Weimark?
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Perla. And Mr. Thain, Ms. Guzman, thank you very much again, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. With that, we will move on to the next order of business, which is the serious use of force cases. The first case up is APD case 24-0080817, presented by Member Weimark.
Okay. 4 officers were involved. The types of force and IAFD findings. Level 3, Officer 1, ordered force and policy. Officer 2, empty hand takedown, injury in policy. Officer 3, empty hand takedown, injury out of policy. Officer 4, empty hand takedown, injury in policy. Level 1, Officer 1, empty hand control in policy. Officer 2, empty hand control in policy. Now, Officer 3, empty hand control out of policy. Officer 4, empty hand control in policy. On September 30th, 2004, Valley area officers were insisting and cleaning up trash and debris left by unhoused individuals at 1st Street, Nevada Avenue, Southwest. While in the area, they received a call to identify individuals committing any illegal activities, such as obstructing movement on the sidewalk. Officer 3 spoke with a CM who was jaywalking and carrying what looked like drug paraphernalia. The officers instructed him to sit down. CM refused and turned around and walked away. Officer 1, 2, and 4 walked over and made a semicircle blocking CM. CM continued to walk away. Officer 1 put a hand on the side of his stomach, commanding him to stop. Officer 1 and Officer 2 grabbed CM by the left and right arm, respectively. Officer 2 grabbed hold of CM's right wrist, keeping a hold on his right arm. Each officer struggled to take CM to the ground on Officer 1's orders. They got him onto his knees, but he got back on his feet. Officer 2 and 3 pulled him down onto the ground while Officer 4 held onto CM's backpack. Based on the totality of circumstances, the force used, except for 2 officers, was reasonable, minimal, and necessary. When taken into custody, CM continued to be disruptive and defiant. He had medical treatment provided. His right wrist was broken. He had an abrasion on his left hand. Officer 3 had some torn calluses on his hand. CM was charged with jaywalking, possession of drug paraphernalia, concealing identity, and resisting, evading, or obstructing an officer. He had not been involved in any other uses of force. There were violations identified for standard operating procedures, none in personnel rules and regulations, and none in administrative instructions. The potential policy violations were excessive force and lack of appropriate supervision. There were no concerns with policy. However, there were with training. The RO improperly identified drug paraphernalia, and the FTO lacked proper supervision. Equipment on an ORBD fell off. Supervision of FTO did not stay close to her RO and did not slow down the call prior to using force.
Thank you, Member Weimark. Deputy Director Abbasi, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, Chair, a few things. This case involved an encounter during attack plan in which an individual was detained, questioned without a clearly defined lawful objective, without any reasonable suspicion or probable cause that a crime has been committed. In this case, the initial contact was made by the recruit officer who was going through the field training. The recruit officer initiated contact with Mr. M under the belief that he was smoking marijuana in public. Upon determining that he was smoking a cigarette, the recruit officer assumed he might be in possession of drug paraphernalia because he was holding a torch lighter. When that assumption did not yield a lawful basis for detention, the recruit officer informed Mr. M that a attack plan was being conducted and that all individuals in the area are required to identify themselves. Mr. M questioned the officer commands and attempted to walk away. The situation escalated and multiple officers engaged in a takedown, restraining Mr. M and applying handcuffs. The incident resulted in Mr. M sustaining a broken wrist, elevating the use of force to a level 3 classification. IFT determined that the initial stop was pretextual and conducted primarily to determine whether the individual had outstanding warrants. The investigation further found that the use of force concerns were linked to insufficient oversight by the field training officer. IFT investigation was comprehensive and the division should be commended for clearly determining that the use of force was out of policy when the initial contact lacked lawful justification. The use of force only by the initiating officer was deemed out of policy in this case. As Member Weimark stated, there were other potential violations that were identified for both the recruit officer and the field training officer, and the department addressed all the identified issues through appropriate administrative channels. The Force Review Board discussed supervisory deficiencies during the review of this case, specifically the failure of the field training officer to provide oversight and intervention during this encounter.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Commander Norris, is there anything you'd like to add?
Nothing.
Board members, do we have any questions for?
Yes.
So there was no paraphernalia?
Well, there was no paraphernalia. Simply being in possession of a torch or a lighter does not constitute paraphernalia if it's not coupled with the substance that is illegal that you were trying to light up. Does that make sense?
Yet they had that listed as a charge.
I'm sorry?
Yet they had that listed as a charge.
It was a charge, that's correct, but that was another thing that we addressed within the investigation. And I want to say that follow up with the actual prosecution of that charge, the sexual prosecution, it was not successful.
Okay.
Yeah.
You remember? One question I did have, for officers 2 and 4, the level 3 use of force was in policy, but officer 3 was out of policy. Can you help me kind of understand the difference? Is it because of the did not have a just cause to stop, or I just there's
right.
two
well,
that
so
are
the
in,
officers who
one
were
not.
found to be in policy, their totality of circumstances were different. Due to kind of the dynamics of the situation, they are dealing with other people at the time. They see another officer getting into a use of force, making what they would think would be a reasonable assumption that this officer had a lawful objective and that this officer was using force within policy. So their totality of circumstances are different than the actual officer who initiated contact with the individual without lawful objective and was engaged in a use of force.
Oh, no, that makes sense. It was just with the only video that we got in the PowerPoint, it was not clear as to why it was in and out of policy.
Yeah, so those other officers were doing something else. They saw that another officer needed help because that officer was in a physical struggle, assuming that there was a lawful objective that this officer had established, which led to the force. So they were assisting getting this person into custody.
Cool. Thank you, Commander. Board, any other questions?
Oh, just one last thing. That he was charged with not giving his name or something?
Concealing identity.
Concealing identity?
Mm-hmm.
Where did that go? Did that actually go somewhere?
No, because there was no lawful
charge?
objective, so there was no reasonable suspicion to stop him for any type of crime. Therefore, you have to have an accompanying crime to charge somebody with concealing identity. There was no crime, so there was no successful prosecution on that either.
So in the long run, the only crime they had was jaywalking?
And that's still a matter of opinion relative to what we saw.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. With that, I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD's Internal Affairs Force Division investigation for APD case 24-0080817. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Warmark. Ms. Burlick, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianic.
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro.
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Affirmed.
Member Weimark.
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Burlick. The next use of force case, which is 24-0085377, will be presented by Member Budenaro.
Thank you, Chair. APD case 24-008537 occurred October 15th, 2024 at approximately 12:40 hours. Officers were dispatched to 304 Conscious Street Northeast regarding a child abuse call. While en route, Officer 1 identified an auto theft report at the same location involving the same subject, MC. Upon arrival, officers spoke with Ms. A, who stated she wanted to pursue stolen vehicle charges against MC. Officers made contact with MC, detained him, and placed him in handcuffs without incident. MC stated that he had permission to use the vehicle after the decision was made to arrest. However, MC exited the patrol car so the officers could remove items from his pockets as part of the search incident to arrest. While Officer 1 was conducting the search, MC fled on foot toward the front of the residence, still in handcuffs. Officer 1 pursued and used his right hand to push MC in the back, causing him to collide with the side of the house and fall onto the sidewalk. MC was immediately taken into custody and became compliant. Medical care was provided on scene. MC suffered minor abrasions to his collarbone, nose, and lip. Officer 1 sustained abrasions to both elbows and right wrist. Charges included unlawful taking of a motor vehicle and escape from custody. He was compliant after being taken into custody, as mentioned. IAFD determined that force was objectively reasonable, necessary, and minimal within APD policy. No violations in standard operating procedure, personnel rules, or administrative instructions were identified.
Thank you, Member Budenaro. Deputy Director Rabasi, is there anything you'd like to add?
Chair, just to reiterate what Member Budenaro stated, the individual was under arrest. He was handcuffed behind his back and he chose to flee from the custody of the officer. The officer pushed him to stop his movement, which appeared to be the reasonable option available to prevent his escape. And there were no violations that we saw on part of the officers or that were observed during the review of this incident.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Commander Norris, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add, actually. I want to start some conversations with the Academy in terms of how we control individuals in handcuffs. So a while back, we used to use a completely different method by holding onto the cheek plates of the handcuff. And that's, I guess, with some training modifications relative to DOJ oversight, monitor oversight, that was changed to use a different technique, which you have less control over the subject. Controlling the cheek plates of the handcuff is a superior way to control somebody while they're in handcuffs. You hang on to them, you search them while you're holding onto those cheek plates. You don't let go of those cheek plates. If that person wants to run away, it's a self-correcting mistake. It's gonna hurt. And this is a way for us to possibly look at a way to decrease what is going to be serious uses of force as opposed to level 3 uses of force as they stand now. So, you know, kind of minimizing the amount of uses of force that we get into in one contact just by simply going back to that tactic. So it's something I plan on talking to the Academy about in the defensive tactics training.
Thank you, Commander Norris. Board members, any questions for?
No.
No. All right. With that, I make a motion that the civilian police.
No, I have nothing.
Sorry. I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD's Internal Affairs Force Division investigation for APD case 24-0085377. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Budenaro. Ms. Burlick, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianis.
Affirmed.
Member Budenara.
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Affirmed.
Member Weimer.
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. The next use of force case, which is 24-00871110, presented by Vice Chair Calderon.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. The date of the case was October 20th of 2024. The levels of forces were used for level 3 was from Officer 1 for empty hand strike with a hard object. Level 2, Officer number 2, empty hand takedown with injury times 2. Officer number 1, empty hand takedown. Level 1s were Officer 2, 1, 1, 6, 3, 4, and 5, all empty hand controls, and with various quantities from 2 times to 3 times. On October 20th of 2024, at approximately 24 hours, officers were patrolling an area near Pennsylvania Street Northeast when an automated license plate reader, ALPR, on Officer number 7's unit identified a potential stolen vehicle. Upon verifying the VIN number of the vehicle, Officer number 1 observed that the vehicle was occupied. Once confirmation of the vehicle's stolen status was made, additional officers were called in. Information was received that the suspect may have been armed during the theft of the vehicle. Officers positioned stop sticks and prepared a high-risk felony stop, establishing a force array in anticipation of possible armed resistance. As PA announcements were made ordering the occupant to exit, MD exited the passenger side and fled on foot. Officers pursued him through an apartment complex. Officer number 2 caught up and executed a takedown, pushing MD to the ground during the struggle. Officer number 1 attempted to control MD's arms. A 40 millimeter launcher slug on the officer's chest inadvertently struck MD in the face. Officer continued trying to gain control as MD resisted by curling up into a fetal position. When Officer number 7 and additional officers 3, 4, 5, and 6 arrived, they assisted in restraining MD by controlling his legs and arms, eventually bringing him to a prone position and handcuffing him. Several moments of resistance and repositioning occurred prior to MD being fully secured by officers. Based on the totality of circumstances, the forces were reasonable, minimal, and necessary. The individual's behavior after being taken into custody, MD was provided medical care by AFR on scene to assist him with the injuries that he was complaining about, and he requested to go to the hospital due to those injuries to his knee and wrist pain. He was treated and released. Injuries sustained by officers or individuals sustained an abrasion. MD sustained an abrasion to left arm with scratches on both hands and an abrasion to left knee. And then the individual was charged with receiving and transferring stolen vehicles, resisting, evading, obstructing. Also had 2 felony warrants on dock and 2 misdemeanor warrants. MD was found to have 1 prior use of force, F2011-2410567. IAFD tactics, training, and policy. There was no deficiencies identified. Equipment was identified. An OBRD and a magazine fell off during the use of force. A radio earpiece fell out, and a 40 millimeter round had to be removed to prevent it from discharging. No supervision or other deficiencies were determined. All 16 use of forces were investigated by Internal Affairs Force Division and determined to be objectively reasonable and within APD policy. A policy discrepancy that was discovered was 2-8-5-A. Mandatory recordings. The Department of Personnel shall activate the OBRDs for any call of service that involves a law enforcement encounter for any other law enforcement encounters that involve community members or any investigative encounters. And that is it, sir.
Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. Deputy Director Abbasi, is there anything the CPOA would like to add?
Yes, Chair, just a couple of things. The unintentional striking on the face by the 14 millimeter that was slung across the chest of the officer was the reason this force classification was level 3 use of force, and all issues that all the force applications were deemed in policy by IAFD, as Member Calderon stated. There was some discussions at the Force Review Board discussing the officer's safety concerns, specifically the decision to not clear the suspect vehicle before initiating the foot pursuit. The situation escalated rapidly where Mr. D fled and the officers prioritized his apprehension. A referral was made at the Force Review Board for a supervisory follow-up with involved personnel regarding safety considerations when bypassing uncleared vehicle during foot pursuit. And then all the applications were deemed, like I said, in policy by IFD.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Commander Norris, is there anything you'd like to add?
Nothing at this time.
Board members, any questions for Deputy Director? No. I did have two things. Of course, I have to have something. One is in the OBRD footage, the individual's talking about a needle, but then that loop never got closed in the findings or anything like that. Is that
Talking about a deal?
a needle?
A needle.
Yeah, I was hearing in the OBRD footage that there was a needle in the individual's person, but never anything else was mentioned about that. So I wasn't sure if that was even looked at or not.
I don't have an answer for you on
that. No, that's why I just was curious if that was there, because I was hearing him shouting, so I just at least wanted to address that. But the other thing I wanted to address is during the footage, I did notice that individual, when it was first taken down, his head was on the curb and his body was on the pavement. But I noticed as quickly as possible, those officers were able to move that individual from the curb to the street, so there was no possibility of him hurting his neck on the concrete. So I do want to commend those officers for doing that, getting that control quickly and moving them, because that could, I looked at it when playing the what if game, holy crap, that could have been really bad if that was there, because they could have lost oxygen. So good job on those officers seeing that and then moving, going, yeah, we got to get them to where this individual is not going to get more injured. So
thank you.
That's all I have. So anything else for the board? So with that, I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD Internal Affairs Force Division investigation for APD case 24-008-7110. May I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. Ms. Brella, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bouillonitz.
Affirmed.
Member Budenara.
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Affirmed.
Member Wemer.
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brella.
You're welcome.
So, thank you, Commander. No, okay. I have a question for CPOA to do some homework for us.
Oh, okay.
So we're good, but I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Director Abbasi, I want to make a formal request that for all level 3s that we get, that we actually get the actual long version footage, so the actual footage, so we can get that in evidence.com. And the reason why I want to request that is because one of the main pillars of the CPOA-B is to recommend policy, make recommendation for policies, right? And with us just receiving the small quantity of video, we're assuming a lot. Obviously, yes, we have the reports and we have, depending on what it is, we have reports and we have certain stuff, but that footage plays a huge role in perception and just different things, right? So it helps set it helps set the stage for everything. And so that would help us if we can work towards that, if we can figure out if you can help us research that, to see what the possibilities are for that.
I would like to echo what Vice Chair Calderon is saying, is because even in Roland's APD case 24-0080817, they talked about one being out of policy, which was the first one, and then the rest being in policy. From a totality of circumstances, we were not able to see those videos based on those PowerPoints, but if we got the whole OBRD footage uncut, we could see that and see that totality. So in addition to making the policy recommendations, we can then see the totality of circumstance. So.
Yes, Chair, Member Calderon, I will communicate with APD and get you all those footage. Are you specifically looking for similar evidence.com videos, how you get for OISs and custody? Okay.
Yeah, we want all the videos for OBRD footage uncut, which should be.
Well, when you say all, sorry to interrupt, when you say all, you mean every involved witness officers or just the involved officers? Because you get to have 300, 400 videos per incident, so
I would say
it's basically similar to what you're getting
involved.
right now.
Yeah, I say we start there, right? And if at that point we determine that it's not meeting the needs, then we can go back and review again. I think we start there, right? Because there's that standard already for the OISs. So let's start there, and then worst case we can come back and revisit if needed.
Yep.
Agree?
Agreed.
Cool.
Agreed, totally.
Awesome.
I will communicate it to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. So the next order of business is officer-involved shootings, which is a standing item. For this month, we do not have any, so we will move on to the next order of business, which is the in-custody death, APD case 24-0094307, presented by myself. The summary of this incident was November 14th, 2024 at 1100 hours. Officers responded to a domestic dispute in the northeast. The caller, Miss Z, which I like the initial on that one, reported her son, Mr. Z, was violating a restraining order by refusing to leave her home and yelling. The officers confirmed 4 active misdemeanor warrants for Mr. Z. Mr. Z was arrested without incident and taken to the Prisoner Transport Center, the PTC, by the arresting officers. At the PTC, Officer C placed Mr. Z in the holding cell with nothing but noting his difficulty walking and a previous broken toe from a scooter accident. Around 14:30 hours, Mr. Z was transported to the Metropolitan Detention Center, MDC, separated from the 3 other female arrestees. At 14:48, Mr. Z arrived at MDC needing assistance to exit the transport van, showing balance problems and leaning backwards as he walked. Seated on a bench nearby the Sally Port, he appeared agitated, sweating, breathing heavily, and swatting at invisible objects. He requested water and continued showing unsteady movements. At 15:10, Officer H requested a medical check by the NDC nurse. Officer H requested a rescue ambulance for the hospital transport. At 15:23, Nurse M addresses Mr. Z and refused to take him into NDC due to altered mental status. Nurse M and C, about 15:14 to 15:31 hours, Nurse M and Nurse C repeatedly attempted to obtain vital signs. Mr. Z reportedly had a history of diabetes, stroke, but did deny the use of alcohol or drugs. Nurse M suspected a possible stroke and relaying that to Officer H. At 15:29, Nurse M noticed Mr. Z stop breathing. The rapid response team did activate. CPR and resuscitation efforts did initiate to Mr. R. And then between 15:31 and 16:08, medical staff provided continuous care. At 16:08, Mr. Z was pronounced dead at MDC. The postmortem examination was held at the UNM Office of Medical Examiners. The cause of death was determined to be toxic effects for methamphetamines, and the manner of death was classified as evidence. The toxicity results also, besides methamphetamines, included alcohol, cocaine, and a compound of a cocaine and ethanol combined. So force used in this, none. Post-use of force medical was provided. No violations, no policy or personal violations were identified. No administrative violations were identified. With that, Deputy Director Abbasi, does the CPOA have anything they would like to add?
No, Chair. Like you said, there was no force used on this incident. There was no violations on part of the 4 prisoner transport officers that transported him to the MDC, and then this incident occurred over there.
Commander, is there anything the APD would like to add?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Board members, do we have any questions?
Not necessarily questions, but more of a clarification for the general public, right? MDC is not managed by Albuquerque, it's managed by Bernalillo County. So the nurses, the guards there are county employees.
Bernalillo County.
Bernalillo County specifically, yes. Sheriff's Department personnel. The PTU or PTC, those are APD staff, and they have a smaller processing unit here in downtown prior to transferring over to MDC. And so just to ensure that clarification of duties, and so to this case, the PTU, PTC, staff members / officers, they're the ones that are clear that there are no wrongdoing in this. Correct. Because of the ones that we have jurisdiction over, including IAP. Yes. And so that's just for clarification of the general public.
Yeah, and also NBC did refuse to take custody of this individual as well.
Yeah, and so at that
So,
point,
yeah,
our
it
officers
had
called
to
rescue
maintain-
and maintain
Yep.
positive control until told otherwise.
So we just want to clear that up for the record, for the public. Member Weimer.
Why didn't the ambulance take him?
I'm sorry?
Why didn't the ambulance take him? An ambulance came and
The
it
ambulance
went.
was called, and from my understanding, there wasn't much they can do. They immediately started working on the individual, and he passed away on scene.
Okay,
It was relatively quickly from when the behavior was noticed to MDC staff working on the individual. Between that period of time, an ambulance was called. When they arrived on scene, it was a very short period of time. They were helping assist the medical staff at MDC when he passed away.
so the OMI came and picked up the body, right? It's the OMI's purview to pick up the body?
I don't know exactly how that functioned, but that's typically how it functions. OMI
Okay.
will go to the scene.
No, I was just curious. And I didn't realize how far along he was when I saw the ambulance driving away empty.
Yeah, they were doing CPR
Yes.
on scene, and so I think when the ambulance arrived, they made a determination that would be better to get him in a more stable position
Yeah.
at that time, rather than, and I can't speak for them as to why they made that decision.
Okay. No, I was just curious.
Thank you, Member Weimer. Any other questions?
I had a real concern with that particular, I didn't get a chance to see when he was really first brought in, but I have a very limited medical knowledge, but I would have recognized the distress much earlier. I don't know if anything could have been done, but clearly there was distress, and you know, his behavior and all of those things. I think immediate medical should have been administered, Narcan, whatever, just to cover APD. It just looked really odd to me from all of his behaviors. So I don't know if there was much that could have been done, but it was clear he was in distress from the very beginning. Just a thought.
Okay.
Member Caldwell?
Mine's not necessarily a question, it's more of like the timetable, right? And it's more of like, to remember Weimark's remark, I just Google mapped how long it would take station 34, I think it was, to get to MDC. It's a 26-minute drive.
Yeah.
To get there now.
It's a haul.
And I'm like, to imagine lights and sirens to get there because of a possible stroke, which would be a priority 1 call for them. It would still probably take 20 minutes, and it took them about 15 minutes to get there on that day, based on the timetable represented. So it's interesting for that aspect that you brought up, because yeah, like 26 minutes to get there at this moment in time. I'm like, dang, that's crazy.
That is if they came from that, AFR came from that location.
If they weren't out.
Right, so we have no idea what location it came from.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, MDC is far out there, and it just takes a long time for a four-wheeled vehicle to get out there.
Yeah.
Right, so that's tough.
Yeah.
Well, to go off Member Udenara's mentioning, it was obvious that he had something going on in the PTC. And I was intrigued why an ambulance wasn't called then, and he was transported to the MDC.
Yeah, I'm reviewing it again. It looks like, so I'm reading the timestamps. It looks at he may have started to lean backwards, is what it says. And this is about 1448 hours, right? So as they arrived there. But he was fine until about 15:10.
Yeah.
And that's where they requested him to be reviewed by that nurse. So it's time. And then the ambulance got there at 15:49, which it was called at 15:16. So.
Oh wait, everything took place at the MDC, right? There
Yes,
wasn't
at the
anything
MDC.
at the PTC.
Yeah,
For
correct.
some
It was
reason, I
all at
thought the
MDC.
beginning was at the
No,
PTC.
they initially had him at PTC and then transported him,
But we
a lot
didn't
of,
see anything of them having him at PTC.
nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay,
Correct, yeah.
okay. Cause for my confusion.
Any other questions?
No. Sorry.
All right. With that, I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD Internal Affairs Force Division investigation for APD case 24-009.
Just a correction. IFD did not investigate this case. Force
Oh.
Division did not. It's IAPS.
IAPS, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm reading off my script here. So so then the clarified motion is that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of Internal Affairs Professional Services Division investigation for APD case 24-009-4307. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Weimark. Ms. Burlick, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianis,
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro,
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon,
Affirm.
Member Weimark.
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barilla. With that, that wraps up the in-custody death cases. I make a motion that we take adjourn for a 30-minute dinner break. Can I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. Ms. Barilla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianis,
Approved.
Member Budenaro,
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon,
Approved.
Member Weimark.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barilla. We'll be back from lunch here in about 30 minutes.
Done.
Welcome back. I make a motion to come out of dinner break. Can I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. Ms. Barilla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianis.
Approved.
Member Budenara.
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Member Wimmer.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barilla. The next order of business is the report from the CPOA subcommittees. First one is policies and procedures, review of the subcommittee, presented by Vice Chair Calderon.
Thank you, Chair. The Policy and Procedure Review Subcommittee met on October 2nd, 2025 at 3 p.m. at the CPOA offices. We met with a concerned citizen about APD's shot spotter and notifications to schools. We turned out to be a bigger discussion than what we had, maybe not what we anticipated, but a bigger discussion that we require more information from. So working with Deputy Director Abbasi and Gabe, they have reached out to leaders within APD to get more information for us so we can ensure that we compile a better response and understanding of what APD's procedures are for certain aspects of notifying public schools based on shot spotters, as shots in general, or critical incidents. So we're pending response for that. That's hoping to get the response for the next subcommittee meeting next month from that deputy chief, excuse me. And then from there, we'll bring any of that information to the full board for review once we compile that. Deputy Director Abbasi, does that summarize it?
Yes, Chair, Member Calderon. I was expecting that you would request the board address.
That's the next part. I have to make sure I'm missing anything. So
Yes,
I can
no,
preemptively
you're absolutely right.
Okay. And so with that being said, I formally want to request that the CPOA actually reaches out to the APD representative for the policy and procedure and the subcommittee on shot spotter notifications near and around schools, formally from the full board. Does anybody dissent?
No, I totally would agree that we need to do that. One thing too, just thinking out loud here, is that it's APD, but do we also want to reach out to APS and some of the other school admins to possibly have that conversation as well?
We had that discussion, but the part is that we can't do a restriction on them, right? So talking with a concerned citizen, we actually advised that they would that they go to the school board as well and fight on that battle as well.
For sure. Yeah.
At the moment, we're currently worried, or not worried, but inquiring about the APD process, right? And at that point, from there, figure out what the next steps would be and how we see fit. But we want to start here within house first, right?
And board, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
I can provide a bit of some information that might assist in this inquiry as well. What information I can provide is that, as you all know, APD has encrypted radios and they share their channels with some. And so they've shared the radios to the APS police. And so that they are on the APD frequency, they hear the calls come in, they hear where the calls are coming in. That may include calls regarding certain shot spotters. So the APS police have access to APD's information through the radios.
That's good to know. Thank you. That actually was part of one of our questions.
Yes.
If they have access to that.
Information's been provided.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. So it's a matter of us fact finding,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
There is no SOP currently detailing this. And so we're just trying to figure out what's the best avenue for this, right? Is it an MOU, or is it, different stuff like that? So we're just trying to work through the fact finding before we start pushing things out.
So my question might be to legal to say, do we need to make a motion for the full board to make the request for a APD policy person to attend, or no? Or we just make it into agreed?
We do it as a typical request at everything else that we do, so there is no need for a vote, correct, council?
I don't think so. I think at this time it just represents a request by the subcommittee wanting to hear from it, and then you'll do what you do, come back with any reports or recommendations that the full board can then consider.
Cool, perfect, thank you.
Yeah, then let's do it that way, for
Perfect.
sure.
So, thank you, Deputy Director, we'll take
Thank
that
you,
out.
Council.
Yes, I will reach out to the APD representative to fulfill the wishes of the subcommittee.
Thank you, sir. And then with that being said, the next meeting will be November 6th of 2025 at 3 p.m. at the CPOA offices. Notice will be posted prior to the meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair Calderon. Any questions for Vice Chair Calderon? No? All right, the next order of business is discussion of possible actions, APD policies, recommendations. With that, I will hand it back over to Vice Chair Calderon.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Reamer, we'll start with SOP 2-8, use of on-body recording devices, OBRD recommendations.
Yes, good evening. Let me step back from the microphone. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. So I would like to start by saying that for both the recommendations that are presented for SOP 2.8 and 233, that's use of OBRD and rights and safety of onlookers, these have already been informally submitted by me via email to the APD policy officers. I have not received responses on either of them, but just so you guys, I'll make you guys aware of everything that's already been said, so you guys know that, and then you guys can tell me if there's anything you'd like to add in a formal recommendation, or if you'd like to follow it up with a formal recommendation or anything like that. So I'll go through what's already been said, and then
the reason for submitting prior is because of the expiration date, right, of the opening period, correct?
Not quite. It was because actually we had a discussion in PPRB, and then the policy author for OBRD reached out to me via email to try to address some of those concerns. So it was kind of a good jumping off point for that. And when it comes to 233, it's kind of, I believe they're more minor policy points that I was putting forward, where I felt like there was a miscommunication in PPRB such that I wasn't fully understood. So I resubmitted them in that regard. But it is important to note that those aren't formal recommendations. There's no requirement for them to reply to me or take those considerations as in the same process as we submit them from the board. So taking that into account, are we good to start with 2.8?
Yes,
okay,
thank
great.
you.
So SOP 2.8, use of on-body recording devices. So the first recommendation in this one has to do with 284B1A. And this has to do with the location or placement of on-body recording devices on uniformed personnel. There's more PSAs, TSOs are in that group, but uniformed personnel is a good way to sum it up. And they moved the placement of these OBRDs from what was originally at the chest level, right? And they included a belt line option for uniformed officers now. So I raised concerns that I received from the CPOA investigators, noting their strong opposition to the change due to predictable reduction in visibility and audio capture in common scenarios, among other concerns. In response, as was mentioned earlier, the policy author reached back out to me after the meeting to confirm CPOA concerns, specify reasons for the change, and he put forth accidental turnoffs, especially when using weapon systems, covering when using equipment or weapon systems as well, and knockoffs in use of force incidents or physical encounters, and propose a compromise that the policy also incorporate language, the optimal placement of the OBRD is in the center chest area. We discussed this at the subcommittee meeting, and I responded with some additional concerns, and I'll lay those out so you guys are aware. So I appreciated the outreach and willingness to discuss a compromise, but described several additional concerns to the ones he brought up. To echo the point that was already made in PPRB, when it comes to reduced visibility and audio capture from a belt line placement, I stated that lowering the permitted placement may reduce visibility and audio capture in some frequent situations, and one didn't particularly notice traffic stops. With OBRD positioned further from mouths and closer to ambient noise sources, idling engines is a good example. Portions of conversation may be difficult to hear, faces may be out of frame, and it could become impossible to see what occupants of a vehicle are doing when an officer is standing outside the window. Another consideration I brought up was the past policy change away from Beltline. So earlier versions of SOP 2.8 allowed the Beltline placement. But as of December 20th, 2023, the policy was revised to the chef's level placement of uniformed officers, and now it's being revised back. I put forth that perhaps reintroducing the Beltline placement could bring back the same problems that prompted the change in the first place, whether that's inadequate recordings or knockoffs or anything of that variety, or external pressure to raise the placement. Next was the critical incidents, and this is what the APD policy author put forward as the reason why they want to make this change. The assertion that these are being covered or sometimes accidentally turned off or accidentally pulled or knocked off in certain critical incidents. And I said, in high-stakes incidents, officer-involved shootings or use of forces, Beltline placement increases the risks of recording being obscured when officers take cover, kneel, or carry their firearm at a low ready position. While chest-level devices can be obstructed, and we have seen it, knocked off or pulled, Beltline placement, I would argue, presents pretty similar risks. And the next consideration I put forth was that the common law or the common law enforcement practice, and I don't want to overstate this point because there is no binding or national standard, but when I did my review of other public policies and model guidelines that are released, I found that Beltline placement is rarely referenced for uniform officers. The torso, shoulder, or even head are typically the only listed options. While we cannot review every department's policy based on publicly available examples that have been found, at least on my behalf, adopting Beltline placement could make APD an outlier compared to most public practices for placement of OBRDs on uniformed officers. But I went on to say that despite these concerns, I do acknowledge from my personal opinion that there is probably no perfect position for these recording devices. Each option, whether it's Beltline, chest, shoulder, or even head mounts, has trade-offs depending on body type, officer role, the equipment they're using, and the incident type they're involved in. From this perspective, allowing some discretion while emphasizing the need to maximize the OBRD's ability to capture encounters and evidence is a reasonable approach. And I agree that the proposed language put forth by the APD policy author, that the optimal placement of the OBRD is in the center chest area, would provide valuable guidance while permitting adjustment if necessary. Although I did have recommendations to that potential language, which is that the policy should not specify center chest, as allowing some flexibility to offset the OBRD at chest level is helpful, as it enables personnel to position the device where it is least likely to be obstructed by their equipment or movement based on their knowledge of how they use their equipment and the experience they have. Also, the CPOA recommended retaining the recently removed outermost garment distinction they had in that directive, which to prevent the inadvertent obstruction by jackets, other clothing or equipment. Lastly, I mentioned that without an enforcement mechanism to this optional guidance language, such as requiring supervisor approval for placement deviations or potential disciplinary measures for unexplained non-compliance with the optimal placement, the chest level recommendation may become functionally optional. Officers could default to personal preference or convenience rather than prioritizing evidence and incident capture. Optional guidance is still preferable because it should lead to personnel exercising optimal placement, but without some reinforcement, it risks becoming ineffective. So that is all I have. That's what's included in the email that I sent the APD policy author for that placement change of the OBRD. And I can continue on with 2.8, or we can pause there.
Do you have any questions at the moment?
I have a comment on that.
Go ahead.
Because I agree with policy analyst Gabe on that placement. Because I do know that there are, I've seen standard issue tack vests, whatever, that have MOLLE, which is a modular lightweight load carrying equipment. It's very common now with those little straps that you could easily attach an OBRD anywhere on the upper body, even if it's not dead center, because I think when we originally when the board came back, we would have belt OBRD footage, and we could barely see anything. So yeah, I strongly agree to not put it back on the belt. Because, I mean, we're not gonna be able to capture anything. At the end of the day, we need to be transparent for the public. And if the officers have an interaction that turns out to be very bad, a level 3 or worse, and their body cam is belt level and you never see anything, I think of a lot of liability too.
Well, this, I guess, isn't a question, but it occurred to me when Officer Norris, Commander Norris, was talking about cameras dropping and falling, that maybe their rationale is the belt placement is safer for that it might not drop and fall as much as it does on the chest.
Yes, and that is the argument that that the policy author put forward as well.
But then again, you're cutting people off and doing all that kind of stuff.
Right. I mean, again, there's no perfect answer, and we've seen it even on belt fall off too, but I would like the transparency of videos. Even if it falls off, at least there's still that totality of circumstance with the recording that you initially got the information versus belt level, you might have just seen somebody's leg.
Well, one of the videos we were watching this time, one of the PowerPoint ones showed a BRD just crashing off.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, to the point of policy analyst Reamer, there's no perfect place, right?
Yeah.
It's all about recommendations. And so we want to change that recommendation and have it more upper, right? That's the recommended location. So he submitted that on the email. You haven't heard back yet, have you?
No.
Okay.
And I should clarify that I didn't recommend moving it back in my email.
Oh,
I was
okay.
more coming from the interpretation or.
Hello, Cleveland.
Sorry, guys. I can go to the.
It's not you.
Oh, it's me?
Oh, it's all of us.
So with that email, so that's already sent off. We're pending that response. So as of right now, there's no vote for us to take on because it's already been sent off by CPOA to get more clarification and to help with that. So hopefully by the next policy meeting, we'll hopefully have a response by then, and we can see what they say and probably come back.
Yes, by then the review would have passed for OBRD, and it should be mentioned that you brought up earlier. Thank you. That we did hear from the policy unit, just kind of requesting that this be expedited. They didn't state a reason why. They didn't state a date that they needed it by. We just replied that we'll at least have to get through this board meeting. However, I have yet to get a response from the APD author about it. But also, in my email, I did not recommend. I made some recommendations about his proposed language for the optimal placement. But I did not disagree with I kind of passively agreed with the movement change, with the understanding that from my perspective, that's from where I was coming from, arguing from at that point, since I had already kind of fought and lost in PPRB, that was the best I was going to get. Now, you guys have your own argument, of course, that I could put forward. So if that's what you'd like to do, then we could certainly go that route, regardless of how yours even replies to my email.
Yes.
I actually am going to throw somebody out here on the fire for the city attorney and your opinion on body cam location for accuracy and from the legal aspect too.
Do you have an opinion?
Do you have an opinion, or do you? I'm putting you on the hot seat.
So what I can say is that the state statute that requires that video be capture investigative encounters and law enforcement encounters does not specify where the placement ought to be. It's a very short statute. It doesn't provide a lot of detail. And so there is no helpful guidance in the law on this question. Obviously, what captures the most is the best in terms of both discovery in criminal and civil cases. And so that's what I would say about that.
And thank you, Rick. That matches back to what Mr. Reamer stated, that there's no one set perfect legal response to that or guidance, right? So with that board, is the are we okay with what Mr. Reamer already submitted by email, or do we want to push it through formally? When's the cutoff date
This
for it?
is
Sorry?
due the 23rd.
23rd?
Yes. And I could reach out to the policy unit tomorrow and ask if they needed, if it has to be what date they want it by, since they asked for expedited. But
Yeah, so I think we can put our council, can we put forth a contingent approval in the event that they do not respond back, or they give back a quicker date of turnaround, that we approve for this to be submitted?
Why don't we make it a little easier and just say, we approve, and if the APD does not do it,
Yeah.
we then do a formal letter to Chief Medina. Right, because if this is,
I mean, right, so, yeah, because we would send this through a formal approval process
Right.
already. They respond back yes or no, and at that point, if you want to push it further, we can.
right,
on a
and
response.
that's just the process, so that way we're not having to worry about weird motions and.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Cool.
Cool. So, is that all for 2.8?
no, there's one more consideration to it.
So
Sorry.
let's go
Just
to.
to say that expense must be an incredible factor involved in this. They're not cheap, those cameras, right?
I'm sure, but from my understanding, it's the same camera that they're using, whether it's chest or belt.
Okay, yeah, I know that. It's just they've got to be considerate of them dropping and breaking, and they're looking for the optimal place for them
Right.
not to drop and break because they're
Right.
expensive.
And to your point, it's not as easy as me going, it was hard for me to argue in the email, for example,
No, I
well, you
know.
should just get better equipment, because of course that would be perhaps tremendously expensive.
Double
yes.
rugged stuff. That's who the provider is. Axon, who is the provider, knows that it's gonna get knocked off, so if they're building,
That was actually discussed, and the response was that it is the best of the best.
yeah, this is the best of the best material, so, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So.
So,
On that point, I will say that it's certainly true that we have seen incidents of the chest levels being knocked off and covered up, but the belt line placement was available for like commanders before this prior, and we've seen incidents of that falling off as well. So that's not a cure to the issue.
yeah, so,
It might happen less if it's not your belt, but I can't testify to
I
that.
mean, it's just statistically relevant. I mean, even if it's less, I mean, at that point, we can argue data and just go, okay, what's the statistical, is it worth the theoretical, whatever, legal, whatever, to costs, whatever, right? I mean.
yes. And so that's why we're pushing
That's
this,
very-
that's why we want to push this recommendation
Yeah.
forward, right? So we can do that. So at that point, let's let Mr. Reamer finish this 2-8 real quick, and then from there, we can take the final approval to push it off formally. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, so moving on to 285C10A. This has to do with vehicle searches. The directive does not account for the OBRD recording of the vehicle searches with a warrant. This was not addressed in PPRB and was discovered because of a relevant CPC investigation. I provided a recommendation in the email that included this OBRD argument. For warrant searches, the policy refers to SOPs 187, Scientific Evidence Division, and 270, Execution of Search Warrants. However, SOP 187 does not impose any OBRD requirements, and SOP 270 refers back to 2.8, creating a circular reference that does not establish any mandate to record searches of vehicles with a warrant. I recommended that the policy clarify that all searches of vehicles with or without a warrant should be recorded. And again, haven't received a reply on that. I don't know the reasoning behind why that wasn't already stipulated. I'm hoping that my recommendation gets approved, but if it's not, I at least hope for a rationale for why that is not in there.
Right, and so that recommendation, of course, that it was a loop of policies, right? Reference this policy, reference that policy, reference this policy. It's just a whole grand loop of referencing each policy and never like a solidified answer. And so the recommendations that Mr. Reamer put forward were to clear that out, right? To make it more concise and not do the loop-a-loop,
So
as I call it.
I just want to make sure I read this correctly here.
Mhm.
Is that if an APD officer is executing a search warrant on a vehicle, he is not required by APD policy to turn on his OBRD camera.
Correct.
Is that is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Based on the recommended proposed change. So that's why we want to add that language in there to help clarify that.
Right. I guess I'm about to have an aneurysm up here. So I'm going to call probably somebody else up here who put him on the hot seat from the academy. Because I want to know what's going on here. I can see myself red on the camera because I'm getting worried. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding, and I want to know what the academy's training. If it's just, hey, we need training and
Right, and
policy.
that's a separate aspect of it, right? So you, of course, you have the policy, and that's what's for the general force as well. What are we training as well?
Yes.
But that's why we have these policy reviews to catch this in the event to prevent it, right?
For sure, but I just want to make sure we're covering the bases now,
No, for sure.
since we just established this could be a, sorry. Lieutenant.
Members of the board, Lieutenant Chandler Houston. So your question is related to what we're training regarding the OBRD?
For executing a search warrant on a vehicle.
Executing a search warrant on the vehicle. I'm gonna have to double check, but I believe, as he was saying, that policy does not require it on the vehicle. Now you do have to utilize the camera when you're doing an inventory check on scene, or if you have a consent to search on scene, so that way you can show that at any point the consent has not been withdrawn. But that's my understanding for it.
Okay. Thank you, Lieutenant.
So with that being said, so the purpose of this is to catch that, right? So the email was sent off to clarify and ensure that. But with that being said, we can vote to ensure that we send a formal recommendation of policy so we can get the response back, right?
I'm going to interrupt again. I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry. The managing attorney, do you have an opinion on this from a legal perspective of not having OBRD footage of executing a search warrant on a vehicle? Because even if they're doing an inventory, that should, like, sorry, I'm losing it up here. I'm sorry.
Before you respond, right? And that's that loop-to-loop portion that we're trying to eliminate, right? Because they're referencing another policy, such as the inventory portion, which requires it, but not the specific vehicle search portion. And that's the recommendation we're trying to push forward, to remove that loop cycle and actually puts it in the policy in black and white, right? So that's what we're trying to do.
True, but I also want to make sure that if city legal has an opinion that might encourage this policy change.
That's what channels are for, right? And that's the process that we are following. So just because her opinion does not make that APD is going to do anything different.
That's fair. I just am curious.
So just to ensure we don't put anybody on spot just for the hell of it.
Would you like me to answer the question?
Please.
Yes.
I think it's included in the definition of an investigative encounter. Gathering such information or evidence includes, but is not limited to, interactions with community members, suspects, victims, or witnesses, and can include consensual court-ordered searches or seizures of persons or property. And a execution of a search warrant on a vehicle is a court-ordered search, which is inherent in the investigative encounter. So I think it's included in the policy.
Okay, I just wanted to get your take. Thank you.
If I may, this came from a CPC investigation where, from my understanding, the investigator tried to sustain on this, but couldn't, and IAPS agreed that there was no mandate to record this, so they did not sustain it.
Okay, so the recommendation is to clear that up, and that's the language that we put in there. So to help futurely prevent this from happening, right? And ensure that there's clear, concise guidance to officers in the field and directive. Ms. Reamer, is there anything else you want to add to that policy?
No, that's it. But just for clarification on the placement recommendation, would and we can work this out depending on the response as well. But would the recommendation in that one be an argument to not move it at all, or be more in the vein of my responsive email, which is trying to get this kind of guidance language included?
I would think guidance language.
Okay.
Yeah, we want the guidance language to be included, right? We want to clarify it.
But we are at ultimately then we're okay with the OBRD moving down to the belt line, provided that there's the guidance language.
So to add context to that question, so are we okay with them changing it to belt line, but the optimal placement is center of the chest, correct? Is that what we're going to recommend? Are we okay with that? Sir?
I'm gonna have to go with no. We gotta not have them on the belt at all if possible.
Okay.
I mean, I'm open to that discussion, but.
No, the belt line, to me, I think optimal is collarbone, to be honest. But we don't need to go any, but I mean, I think it's necessary.
Yeah, it's to protect APD. It's also to protect the citizens of Albuquerque, and if it's on the belt, I see a decrease of that. And I'm just gonna be honest about that.
Yeah, I agree.
So, okay. Member Whitemark, do you have anything to add real quick? No? So with that being said, the recommendation from the CPOAB is that we have Mr. Reamer submit formally that we do not recommend that the policy be changed from what it currently is. Okay. Does that stand?
Do not change from what it currently is, but I would also add optimal placement of OPRD as in the center of the chest.
I would say to that, there is I agree with you, that's typically the best spot. The point they raise, especially, and I know I've seen this, is with firearms. They can be covered. Sometimes if the officer's given the ability to move it to one side of their chest, that could be more prevented. And those are big, potentially controversial incidents that it's very useful to have a good view of. So I certainly agree with the chest level placement, whether it has to be center chest or if it can be a little bit more, as it was before, kind of just at chest level. I think that is, as it was before, I think that would be in my personal opinion, that's the best spot until unless they ever invest in headgear. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's gonna be two parts, right? So, yep. To verify before I make the motion will be that we recommend that the policy does not get changed as it currently as written, but we do add, the policy remains as is, but we add that the optimal placement for the OBRD is going to be the chest area. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's the first portion of that motion. The second portion of the motion is that maybe I can just do two motions because it'd be easier. I'm going to do that. So, okay, I make a motion for 2-8-4-B-1-a that we advise the CPOA to submit on our behalf that the current policy for OBRD placement remains the same, but that we also add in there that the optimal placement for the OBRD will be in the chest area. Make it a second.
Second.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Barela, make it a roll call vote.
Chair Bouillonitz.
Approved.
Member Budenaro.
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimark.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barela. I'm going to throw you off the cusp right there. The second motion for this 2-8 will be for 2-8-5-C-10-a, and this would be to push forward as a formal recommendation that they add in there the with or without a warrant should be recorded. May I get a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Barela, let me get a roll call vote, please.
Chair Bouillonitz.
Approved.
Member Budenaro.
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimark.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barela. Thank you all for the discussion. And that, oddly enough, we kind of had the similar discussion in the subcommittee, and so we're not far off. It literally took them like the most of the time too. So now moving on with that one, we'll move on to SOP 2-.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
Chair,
Apologies.
Just one thing before you move on.
Deputy Director, go ahead.
That last section, you said that you recommend that the policy clarify the vehicle searches with or without warrant should be recorded. Is it
should be?
Should or shall be? Because should would not make it
shall.
mandatory.
God, scream it.
Sorry,
There's a microphone next to you.
It needs to be shall. Let's be very clear. It should be. It will be shall.
Thank you. Just want to make that clear.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Come on, calm down over here. Okay, thank you. Moving on to SOP 2-33, so rights and safety of onlookers.
Yes, and two considerations on this one as well. One had first had to do with a directive that was stricken in this most up-to-date version of the policy. It had to do with onlookers being in the immediate vicinity of an incident or an interaction between the police and an individual. And they struck a directive that kind of described the meaning of immediate vicinity and gave it a 6 to 10 foot benchmark. So going off of that, so the sentence explaining the meaning of immediate vicinity and the requirement for for it to be articulated was stricken from the policy. I actually, after talking to some investigators in my office, I actually agreed after the PPRB meeting with the author's point that specifying a fixed distance, like 6 to 10 feet, is often impractical, given how often these situations vary, depending and how far they may need someone to step back or what may be happening in the situation. Although I do believe it is important that personnel be required to be able to articulate their reason for directing or forcing someone to move from the immediate vicinity. To preserve officer discretion but reinforce that officers cannot arbitrarily move people out of the immediate vicinity, I believe that 233-4A1 should be revised as follows. And it reads, sworn personnel shall allow people who are not involved in an incident to remain in the immediate vicinity to witness stops, detentions, and arrests of suspects occurring in public areas, and shall allow them to overhear and record the encounter between the individual and the officer. In the new language that I recommended, it says sworn personnel may only direct or require individuals to move under the following circumstances and shall be able to articulate the reason for doing so. And then the 3 reasons why an officer would be presented that are already in the policy would follow. This recommended language does not imply, from me, that officers must articulate their reasons for directing someone to move as they do so, as that is not always practical. But it would ensure that officers can explain in a civilian police complaint, for example, why they thought there was a risk to safety or interference with their duties that warranted removing someone from the immediate vicinity. And this is tries just to cut out any arbitrary use of that directive. And if there are any questions on it, we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, so the purpose was to clarify and remove the 6 to 10 feet portion, because obviously that could be dependent upon circumstance, right? But as long as they can justify it, there's reason behind it, right? Because it might be active shooter situation, and I want someone 10 feet away from the main shenanigans. That's impractical, right? And so the portion of it would be that we put in there that they're able to articulate it. And so that's what we came up with in the subcommittee. Comments, questions, concerns?
I hesitate to, I get 6 to 10 feet, that's not that far, but immediate vicinity is very vague and is very dependent. So we could do, instead of 6 to 10 feet or what, we could do up to a certain distance that's within somewhat reasonable, but still, and that's just.
I question the policy aspect. How do you measure that?
Yeah.
Right, without pulling out a measuring tape, right? It's all perception, right? And what one officer can perceive as 6 to 10 feet or 20 feet, the other can perceive it as 15, 10, 50, right? How do you articulate that and make that plausible in reality, right? There's no markers, there's no guidance on it. So how do you make it that the officers can determine that?
We should all issue digital measuring tapes
No.
for officers.
No.
No,
you have to find a happy medium on it, right?
Yeah.
Because yes, we can say that, but it's line of sight visual, right? So the purpose that we're able to do that is articulation, right? If you can justify, if you can give the whys and the reasons, that's the most important part, right?
I'm also worried about the articulation, right? Define and articulate why is also very vague. Like and that's just like that could just be a level of standard too you gotta deal with.
Yeah, but they have to give the why, and we can question that why. I can't question 15 feet. I can't question 20 feet. But I can question the whys. And let's say they do break that policy, we can question that why of that officer, or the investigators can, and ask, why did you say this? And the totality of circumstances did not dictate that, right? So they have to take into account that totality of circumstances to ensure their reasoning is justified, right? So that's the purpose behind it. But between the 15 and 20, it's all perception, right? Between measurement of feet and distance, it's all perception.
Just make it a quarter mile. Call California.
No, no, that's too far, right? Because also you're trying not to infringe on the rights.
Right,
of
that's where
recording
it's.
and all that stuff, right? But if I can tell you, you need to go that way because it's unsafe in this area, for whatever the call's for, that's at least a reason, right? And it can be questioned later on. What was that call for? It was due to, shots fired or something crazy. You know what I mean? You can justify that and you can actually go back on it. But I can't go back on the 15 feet or 20, any of those metrics just because of that.
Just a question. Right now, how far away is Member Bordenaro from me? Approximately, of course.
10 feet-ish.
10 feet-ish. That seems rather close to me.
Yeah. No, that's what,
That
like.
definitely seems rather close.
Yeah, especially for intense incidents.
Yeah.
You know,
That's.
I'm sorry, I don't want no one near me. It's just
Well,
generality stuff, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying, like, up to, we could say 100 yards. We could do.
But then again, the measurement. How do you measure that? How do you make that practical? You can't. That's the thing. That's the struggle we get on. You can't make that practical. And we're not going to pull out a yardstick. We're not going to pull out a digital measuring. We're not pulling that stuff out, right? Because priority is not that at the time. So you're adding undue burden on an officer for overall safety, right? Because their duty is their safety, their partner's safety, and as well the public, right? But if you can justify it, that's the biggest thing. You have to be able to justify it, and that's our recommendation, is that you have to justify it. You can't just arbitrarily say because of this, right? Because they can be questioned. They can file a complaint.
Yeah.
We review the OBRD, we review all the footage, the reports, all that stuff, and if the reason is shenanigans, it will come out in that.
Okay.
Right?
All right, okay. Okay.
So, thank you for the discussion. I like it. I like that policies get discussions. So with that being said, is there any other further questions? Any changes that you want to make on that?
No.
Perfect.
So we're staying with the 6 to 10 feet?
No, we're taking that out.
Requesting more?
No, we're not going to request more.
We're just taking it out altogether?
Kind of. So we're going to request that sworn personnel may only direct or require individuals to move under the following circumstances, which are listed already, and shall be able to articulate the reason for doing so. Shall's in there because I know it's a different word. So that they should articulate the reason for doing so. And so I'll make that motion for this one, Gabe, and then we can go on to the next 2-33, okay? So make a motion that we direct the CPOA to submit our recommendation for SOP 2-33-4-A-2, stating that sworn personnel may only direct or require individuals to move under the following circumstances that are listed prior and shall be able to articulate the reason for doing so. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Bennett, let me get a roll call vote, please.
Chair Bouillonnet.
Approved.
Member Budinaro.
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Member Wemmer.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barela. With that being said, we'll move on to SOP 2-33-E-1 through SOP or through 2-33-4-E-3. Mr. Reamer.
Thank you. So this one, I should mention that this is not coming from the investigators in my office. This is all my opinion. So I believe the language regarding drones in this policy, or SUAS, is slightly contradictory and may place too high a standard on grounding or confiscating those devices. So in PPRB, I raised my concern about how I feel the language in a manner similar to any other weapon places too high a standard on the department before it can take action against potentially dangerous SUAS or drone. Excuse me. I believe that the second sentence requires an or statement instead of a comma. Otherwise, the directive stating that the SUAS must be used in a manner similar to any other weapon before it can be confiscated or grounded. So the recommendation would be if the drone is operated in a manner that endangers the public or in a manner similar to any other weapon, the drone shall be confiscated or grounded as an exigent safety measure to protect the general public. Originally, that or is just a comma, which I believe the sentence already reads kind of strangely. So that could be fixed, but if that's how it's written with the comma instead of the or, it's directly stating that it has to be used that way to reach that bar of confiscation or grounding, which I personally, just from my opinion, I think that's kind of too high of a standard. By the time it's being used as a weapon, problems already been caused, probably. So that's that. And then I also believe the policy is slightly contradictory. Section 233-4E1 states that personnel shall not take enforcement action regarding drone usage, regardless of whether the operation is nefarious or not. while section 233.4E3 directs grounding or confiscation under the circumstances it mentions. To resolve this, I recommend a revision to section 233.4E1 to make the directives match. So it would turn into department personnel shall not take enforcement action regarding drone usage, except in circumstances where the operation endangers the public. So remove that nefarious language and exchange it with that. Currently, there are no Albuquerque City ordinances in New Mexico state statutes governing drone usage. I believe this revision acknowledges that drones are not subject to city or state regulation in that kind of way. Therefore, they do not require proactive enforcement. But this maintains that personnel still have authority to act when a drone poses a genuine public safety risk. I will say about this policy that this is difficult, as we know that 233 has to do with the rights and safety of onlookers. So when they're writing, I believe when they're writing the directives for drones in this policy, they're thinking in a very defined, narrow context of, you know, someone recording an incident with the police. This isn't just general drone usage at a park or something like that. So I may be going a step too far by trying to make it all encompassing like that. Well, they're taking a more narrow view, but I will say there's no other place in APD policy as it stands now, because there's no laws on the matter, where this stuff is really laid out. So those are the two recommendations for that part of the policy.
And part of the discussion that we had during our policy subcommittee, we're of course talking about the FAA rules for drone operation. Actually states that you're not, by FAA rule and federal law, you're not supposed to fly over crowds and certain stuff like that in generality, right? And so it's trying to mesh this and ensure that, to Mr. Reamer's point, is that, you know, the or comment, so it does that. But because what if a drone is being used as a weapon in some form of fashion, you know, can we enable APD to confiscate at that point? Well, then yes, because now that person can just go away. And there's other policies or procedures within that recommend steps that they should take for certain stuff, such as notifying FAA and certain things like that. But this portion is the one that we had the modifications on.
Yeah, I like in the first one, it's like, you know, possibly used in a manner similar to that of any other weapon, I think is helpful. But the question that I go to, because it's not, at least I don't know if it's defined or where it's defined, it's like operation endangers the public. How do you define? Because that, I mean, just being recorded in a public place is legal with a drone, but that does not endanger the public. So that's where's that like. And that's just an argument from a lawful perspective of what is determined to endanger the public.
I agree, but as well that can be a question for like open carry.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Common sense, right? But
common sense is so common, more people will have it.
You're not wrong. But to that point, though,
if I could, actually, I think your point's well taken by me, because I'm the one that's trying to put forward that more of this kind of common sense standard, which I agree. There's ways that it could be. People think about these things differently, and when you use the language like in a manner of weapon, it is more specific. That's a little bit easier of a criteria. I'm just coming from the perspective that I think that's too high of a standard. So if there's better language we could use, or I mean, perhaps that's the best language. As far as I know, this has not been a big problem as of yet. I haven't heard a lot of stories about, you know, people crashing drones into people yet. So, or reckless flying even. I don't know how often that's happening.
Unfortunately, we'll adapt it when we need it. But yeah, for right now, I think it's fine. I just think it's one of those things that put a feather in your cap for define endangers the public for drone operation. I like how it goes back to, you know, or use the similar as another weapon, which is good. But then if you're just flying around, what do you define as, you know, like if your drone has a freaking disco ball on it, you could argue that's like, where's that? Not saying, I mean, again, somebody's going to do it on a sunny day in Albuquerque.
Yeah, I just feel like we don't want to build too strong of guardrails, that it limits as well, right?
Yeah, right. At least I'm just willing to call it out.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of like, what's the happy medium, right? And where's that happy place? Because if you put too much of guardrails, and say
Right.
it falls out of that guardrails, now
Yeah.
you're like, oh. we
Right,
suck.
yeah,
We failed, right?
Let's leave it, I'm gonna go, yes, good, I'm just putting it,
And the good thing about our ordinance powers that were given to us is that we can also, in the event that we do see an uptick in investigations, or complaints, or any of that stuff, or information, we can always pull the policy out
yeah.
and send out of cycle recommendations.
Or create a known policy for it.
Well, there's the drone policy itself, right, for APD's usage, of it, right? But this portion of us is actually
For
just the
onlookers,
public.
yeah.
So it's in the onlookers one, but it's for the public in general.
This is what, in my own addle brain way, I was trying to address it at the policy meeting. Because I do remember them saying something about a drone not flying too low over a crowd scene. And can they arrest the drone, or what do they do?
I suppose they try to find who's flying it.
Right. And at that point as well, the policy that they're notifying the FAA and different stuff like that, gathering evidence, whether it be OBRD, pictures and stuff like that, they submit it to the FAA, and the FAA at that point takes over.
Okay.
But as to your point, and I think we spoke about this, FAA rules for general public drone usage is you cannot fly over a crowd of people, or people in general. You just cannot.
There's
By
a
rules.
problem with that, though.
Yeah.
The FAA drone rule does not apply to every personalized drone. It only applies to certain classes of drone. So you can buy an Atlas drone from Amazon, I can't remember the name of the brand, that does not fall under those rules.
To my understanding, FAA rules apply to all drone
No.
usage on all classes.
No, they do not.
Well, I mean.
Because I just bought a drone, that's why I know it doesn't apply. So it's not all classes of drone. And being a millennial, he's looking it up.
Yeah, he's just watching
But
it go
he's
out of
wrong,
his
but
control.
that's okay.
Hey, we'll look it up, we'll verify. That's what it's for.
But I mean, regardless, if that's something that city council wants to look at to create an ordinance, great, but from this aspect, I think we should leave it how policy analyst Gabe has put it, just for now, right? But it's just something to look at, because this is ever evolving with technology and drone usage, so.
I agree.
So.
How do you feel about that? The or portion in Mr. Reamer's recommendation. Well, right, the comma and the or.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're.
Okay, we'll take a vote on it then. So with that one being said then, I make a motion that we approve the recommendations from Mr. Reamer for 2-33-4-E-3 and 2-33-4-E-1 as written in the documentation provided. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank
Xander, second.
you, Chair. Ms. Butter, let me get a roll call vote, please.
Member Boyer, second.
Chair Bolianis,
Approved.
Member Budenaro,
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon,
Approved.
Member Weimark. Member Weimark.
Approved.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chair, that motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barela. Moving on to our last recommendations, which would be SOP 2-34 notifications of significant incidents. Mr. Reamer.
And this will be an easy one because there's actually no recommendation for this one. This one was included in the recommendation section for the purposes of the subcommittee meeting as a placeholder for a potential good option as a policy for potential language when it came to the public comment that we received about the shot spotter around schools. This is a good policy to flag for how that develops. This may be a policy that we incorporate language into to help enforce the rules of whatever comes from that. But no other recommendations beyond that, other than just to keep it in consideration as the thoughts on that develop.
Perfect. So yeah, we'll see what the findings come out of our subcommittee, and we'll report back to the board, and hopefully we either would do this one or another policy. We'll work with that policy owner or owners to see what would be the best fit for that one. Perfect. So no vote for that. No. With that being said, moving on to the next section, which is the no recommendations.
You want me to do that one? Or are you good?
Thank you. Okay. There's no recommendations for SOP 1-5 harassment or sexual harassment in the workplace, SOP 1-2 volunteer and internship programs, SOP 1-21 Bicycle Patrol, SOP 1-27 Cold Case Unit, SOP 1-34 for Crime Prevention Unit, SOP 1-35 Crime Scene Specialist Unit, SOP 1-39 DWI Unit, SOP 1-42 Bomb Squad, SOP 1-57 Identification Disposition, SOP 1-58 Crime Gun Intelligence Center, the CGIC, SOP 1-81 Proactive Response Unit, the CPU, SOP 2-40 Misdemeanor Traffic and Parking Enforcement, SOP 2-50 Crash Review Board, SOP 2-81 Off-Duty Conduct Power Arrest, SOP 2-112 Violence Intervention Program, SOP 3-8 Data Governance Program, SOP 3-29 Issuance and Usage of Area Command Equipment, SOP 3-42 Criminal Investigation Department Personnel. All those SOPs listed do not have any recommendations from CPOA or CPOA B Subcommittee. Moving on to the last portion of this section is APD response to policy recommendations for SOP 2-47 crashes involving department-issued vehicles and SOP 2-46 for response to traffic crashes. Ms. Reamer?
Yes, if you remember, a while back we submitted a letter to the chief arguing that PSAs and TSOs should not be the primary investigators for crashes that involve department-issued vehicles. We received a response that was very welcoming of our recommendations and our considerations as well, because we brought in risk management and had some examples of how we thought this went awry. And in following their response that agreed with most of our concerns, they put forward a draft proposed order that you can see, the proposed draft SO for 247 that lists how that language would change. It's not everything that we argued for in the letter. In the letter, we argued for trying to get the most experienced, the motor traffic division to investigate these, but at their proposed order says sworn officers, but that is certainly more towards the direction that we were trying to push them. So this, I don't know where this is in their schedule. I don't know when they plan to submit it or if they even do. But I did also submit, or I wrote an email to the person that was put on this proposed order to write questions to, asking what they would qualify, like what is the actual definition of injury, and same for major, the distinction between major and minor damage. I imagine those are pretty what we think they are. Injury is something that may need medical attention. Major damage might mean that the car can no longer operate. Some distinctions like that, but just so we're aware of what those distinctions actually are or how it would be applied. And yes, so that's where we're at with that proposed special order for 247.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Board members, any questions for CPOA or Policy Analyst Gabe? All right, thank you so much. Deputy Director Boss, anything else you want to add before we move on? Nope. All right, then the next order of business is other business. I do have one thing I want to bring up to the board, and that is I would like the CPOA Deputy Director and Director to request Chief Medina to come on our December board meeting to give us a recap of APD 2025 and kind of give us a future plan of his plan for 2026. Right, just in that way, we're just kind of getting a recap from him, directly from him, kind of the state of APD at the end of the year and what it looks like going forward 2026. What do y'all think?
Put your mic on.
No.
I'm on. We have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions, thoughts, ideas?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Great. All right, so then, yeah, that is formal request. Deputy Director, if you want to take that as an action item for me.
Certainly, Chair. I will reach out to the chief. I don't know about his scheduling, if it's going to be in conflict with the CPOA board meeting in December, but I will communicate what the board
January would
wishes.
work too.
January, I'm hoping December, because then that way it's the end of the year versus January, right? Trying to get cadence, but that's why I also wanted to do it now, because then that gives us
Well, I mean, it would give us
a couple of months for him to figure some stuff out. So, But yeah, that's what the quest is,
Let's
hopefully.
shoot for December, back to
Yeah.
January.
Right.
There we go, let's do that.
Once the mayoral election is over and the new / maybe old mayor is elected, could we request for the mayor to come and visit and outline a few things, or is that against some kind of policy or something?
Chair, Member Weimark, so you would want to request mayor to come to the board meeting next month prior to?
No, after the election,
After the election?
like January, February, something like that. I'm just throwing that out as a plan.
Certainly, I can always extend the invitation. I don't see
Yeah.
any reason why not.
Perfect. Awesome.
And just to clarify, so you are wanting Chief Medina, Chief of Police, to be at the board meeting in December. If he's not available in December, you want it in January?
Correct.
Of 2026?
Yep, to provide
Thank
a
you.
state of the.
What,
APD.
recap of 2025 and
Yeah.
then kind of the state, kind of future, what 2026 goals are for APD.
Will do.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the next business adjournment. So with that, our next regularly scheduled meeting will be November 13th here in the Griegos Chambers at 5 p.m. So with that, can I get a motion, or I make a motion to adjourn the meeting? Can I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. Ms. Perella, can I get a roll call vote?
Chair Bouillonens.
Approved.
Member Budenaro.
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimer.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you so much, Ms. Perella.
You're welcome.
Everyone have a great rest of your evening. Have a great night.